Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Fell in Love with Tatsumaki Part 6. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Nobody could have predicted how events transpired. Yes, it was quite frightening to watch your favorite heroes defeated so easily. However, nobody ever imagined that a child, much less Izuku, would arrive on the scene and defeat the formidable antagonist. Does that imply that hope existed? No, that was not possible. It was evident to many viewers, particularly his classmates, that he just caught her off guard. Viewers like Uraraka were therefore afraid of their new friend as they watched. His punch amused evil psychos. She couldn't help but smile as she stood back up on her feet. It was also unexpected to believe that Izuku had become so powerful. It was obvious that she had underestimated. Obviously, if she hasn't already killed him, she will need to reassess him. I'm quite surprised, Midoriya Izuku. Just what are you doing in a city miles away from your home? She inquired. Izuku asked in surprise, why you know my name? Why, of course I do. I did hack into UA's systems that one time. Did you think I would just cause trouble and leave? I may be a monster, but I'm a strategist. Even the Pentagon holds little secrets from me. That fact troubled Izuku, and he wasn't the only one. It was only a sign of trouble when someone implied that they had breached one of the world's most secure locations. However, there was more at stake now, particularly with regard to the younger-looking psychos behind him. Izuku said, I have to get her out of here, and focused on his next move. At that moment, full cowling started to switch on and off. Although he had not yet mastered this new power, he could escape evil psychos with younger psychos if he could at least maintain it for a while. When psychos asked, you're not going to answer me, he laughed. Then you shall die. His eyes opened when he heard crackling. He hardly had time to react before a yellow lightning bolt was released by the dark clouds above him. However, he demonstrated his incredible reflexes by backflipping before the bolt could kill him. He was aware that he lacked the strength to battle psychos. Earlier, he just got the drop on her. However, he had one thing to be sure of. He could remove psychos from the scene as much as he could. He yelled, I'm getting you out of here. Hang on. When he came to her, young psychos just nodded and clung to him. Before leaving the scene, the teenager ran as fast as he could, even jumping over a car, with her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck. Naturally, evil psychos did not try to stop him. She enjoyed observing as a woman of science, and Izuku's achievement at the moment motivated her to pay closer attention to him. She said to no one, impressive. Most impressive. I was going to just take her, but now my curiosity can't go away. That is why, before even Tatsumaki arrives, I'm going to play with him more until he's nothing but a broken toy. With that, she gave some of her soldiers a psychic order. Izuku was shocked by his good fortune. He had not been attacked by evil psychos. That ought to have brought him some relief. But there was the nagging suspicion that this was deliberate. But he was unable to concentrate on that. The streets were empty, and he was the only brisk figure running. He was still being held by young psychos, and everything appeared to be going well. Young psychos questioned, why? You shouldn't have come to save me. You don't know what you're getting into. You're right, I really don't know what got to me. But you could just say my body moved before I could understand what was happening. Izuku acknowledged. One moment I was rushing out of my apartment. I saw you were in trouble on the news. Next thing I know a black misty covered him, and I found myself just there. A dark haze, she pondered. Could he possibly be involved? But I'm not going to back down, nor am I going to hold back. If I did, then I don't think I would be worthy to be a pro hero one day. I see. A smile formed on her lips. He truly is what I saw coming up. She thought, the strongest hero. The pleasant atmosphere abruptly changed when the ground in front of them began to fracture. With a battle cry, a group of monsters, some of which varied in size and appearance, leapt out, prepared to murder any human they saw. One of them yelled, kill the boy. Capture the girl. Roger that, the others yelled. Psychos was very concerned. Midoriya. Izuku just clenched his fist, but he could hear her clearly enough. With it, he punched his way through the monsters, sending their body parts to the ground as full cowling reactivated. I won't let you guys get your hands on her. The road also splattered with their blood. The power display by Izuku stunned everyone in the scene, including Psycho's winged monster. However, he had no time to relax. He continued to run when all of a sudden more monsters started to emerge from the ground in front of them. Every monster emitted its own unsettling battle cries. However, none of them could defeat Izuku. Some of them were in his path, so he leapt and punched them. His shoes kicked others who attempted to sneak behind him until they splattered on the ground. It must be one for all, full cowling because of this power. As he continued to struggle through, Izuku came to this realization. I think I can if I can just hold on to it. He started to think, but Psychos interrupted, look out. She was correct to retaliate against the new danger they faced. He inhaled a somewhat familiar scent that caused the teenagers to cover their noses. Izuku was aware that he must not allow the thing to enter his lungs. If he did, he wouldn't be able to fight. He had slain the last plant creature with this ability, but another one was only a few meters away. Its head resembled a sunflower with a spooky face in the middle, while the rest of its body resembled a plant's green roots. Izuku dodged the vines in response to the monster shooting them at him. However, he was unable to continue after that, so he was grabbed by the feet and lifted into the air. Young Psychos was pulled abruptly to the ground. Additionally, he became distracted from fully cowling. The monster screamed, now, to kill you in front of everyone, and hurled its vines directly at him. His vines were supposed to pierce his skin, but he refused to let it happen. Grasping his fists, he focused enough to make full cowling come back to life and punch the vines to shreds. His only option now that he was free was to descend, more precisely, to stand atop the monster, and punch it into splattered fragments. The impact came next. The teenager survived the fall, but the pain persisted, even though his height was nothing compared to the enormous robot he defeated on the UA entrance exam. Even Izuku was taken aback by his survival. I made it. The deep male voice said, 39 out of 100. A shadow began to grow beneath Izuku. There was only one possible meaning. He jumped away just in time as a result. There was another monster here, and this one was thicker than the one Izuku had just slain. I am Rhino Wrestler, declared the monster. I believe you humans group me as a demon-level monster. I wish to fight stronger opponents. Though a child is beneath me, you clearly are stronger than you look. Now fight me, so I shall give you the points you deserve. Izuku had hardly time to answer. With his head hunched forward and his horn ready to deliver the kill, Rhino Wrestler simply charged him. Fortunately, the teenager managed to leap over the monster, but not before recognizing one error. If you won't face me, then I'll just trample on that one over there. Young Psychos was exposed and exposed. To save her, Izuku yelled her name and hurried over. Naturally, this was all a ruse by Rhino Wrestler, who spun around and punched Izuku in the face after spotting him. Ha! Surprise! Midoriya! Exclaimed the young Psychos in terror. They already feared the worst. However, Izuku took them by surprise once more when he accidentally reactivated full cowling and leapt over the rhino as the creature hit the ground. However, as he did so, he also grabbed the horn, which caused the monster to be lifted off the ground and, upon landing, slammed him on his front. Rhino Wrestler was ecstatic. With a loud cry, he threw his arms aside and rushed back to his feet, demonstrating it. After saying, yes, now that's what I'm talking about. I can see why Psychos brought me to you. He punched Izuku hard. He couldn't get away from it this time. Knowing the worst, he clenched his fist and refused to back down. One for all. 100%. Delaware Smash. When their fists finally touched, there was only one result. Rhino Wrestler screamed in agony as his entire arm spattered with blood and guts, shocking everyone, including the monster. Izuku had turned out to be far more powerful. Of course, there was a cost to the accomplishment. Izuku pulled his arm back and bit his lip, letting out a groan. The monster's attack had caused some damage to his own arm. Through the agony, Izuku shot back, but I'm not done yet. Thus, with that resolve, he struck the fatal blow. The red lines across full cowling's arm grew brighter, and his electricity danced wildly. When Rhino Wrestler realized something, his eyes grew wide. Such strength. He's really a more formidable opponent, he thought, and he accepted his fate. Your score is 100%. Izuku coughed up blood after his fist struck his stomach. After that, his body was launched into the air and then crashed through a structure. The monster was silent as a result of the damage. Izuku had overcome yet another challenge. The real test, however, had only just started. A male voice that I didn't recognize said, "So he lost too." It didn't sound human at all. Izuku turned to see the two monsters standing atop a building in the direction it had come from. He recognized them immediately, and he gasped. He was certain of their identities, particularly the slender one with the bandages covering most of its face except for his right eye. Those are monsters of the demon level. The Royal Ripper and Bug God. Bug God had thick green skin and was a serious buffed monster. He stood on 2 feet, had 4 eyes, and had incisors on his face. Royal Ripper, his companion, was the total opposite of him. He had long black hair that matched his black dress, so even though he was humanoid, his arms were actually blades. The one of nightmares was the Royal Ripper. Royal Ripper was the type that liked to hunt kids, in contrast to Bug God, who was notorious for murdering the majority of the heroes he came across. According to some, he may have existed in Imperial ancient Japan and was the inspiration for frightful tales parents told their kids to make them obey. The Royal Ripper delighted in torturing people, particularly children. Some monsters had that sick thought, but his methods were far worse than those of the monsters. Perhaps that's why Izuku started to get anxious when they descended from the structure. He was facing a monster that was notorious for pursuing odd-behaving children. Royal Ripper raised his blade to his face and crossed them, saying, "What's the matter, kid? Cat got your tongue, or are you just scared to see me?" All Bug God did was fold his arms. To think that Rhino wrestler would lose, I knew he was pathetic, but I didn't expect that much. He stated, "It doesn't matter now, we have instructions to kill you and take the girl away. Am I right, Royal Ripper?" "Yes, you." He gave a pause before jumping directly at Izuku. "R. Watch out," exclaimed young Psychos. The adolescent boy hardly had time to get away. He believed he was saved when he jumped back, but then he saw a cut at the front of his shirt. As the monster spoke, Izuku's image was reflected on the Royal Ripper's blade. "Oh, so you do have nice reflexes. I wanted to confirm your speed, so I held back. You see, when it comes to brats with quirks, I tend to tease them and let them use their quirks so they can think they have a chance to escape or win. Then I cut down that confidence piece by piece, just as I cut their limbs." "Enough talking, Royal Ripper." Bug God yelled at him. "We don't have that much time before the heroes arrive. It would be problematic if All Might gets back." "Whatever, let me have a bit of fun." The monster then leapt at Izuku, surprising him. He started slicing at Izuku with his blade-like arms, not intending to kill but rather enjoying watching him avoid it all. The teenager was forced to give the monster the excitement he craved. He clutched his arm and was panting heavily at the end of the moment. They showed no mercy to his clothing. Cuts were present in a number of places, some of which reached his skin. No matter how many times he tried, full cowling would not react. That was a really useful ability for him now. He couldn't afford to relax. Despite his size, Bug God appeared behind Izuku out of nowhere and slammed his fist down on him. Izuku had to use his own reflexes to raise his arms and stop the assault. However, the blunt of it forced his feet into the ground, creating a crack like a spiderweb. With a sigh, Bug God seized Izuku's body. Then, anticipating the worst for the adolescent human, he threw him to a building across. Izuku had the same thought, but set it aside. He reactivated full cowling and performed a backflip, allowing him to plant his feet on the building's side, while keeping in mind Katsuki's fighting style. Without any delay, he leapt from the building, which had several large cracks in it. When they saw him approaching, Bug God and Royal Ripper sprang forward, prepared to murder him. Luckily, the teenager thought of a way to protect himself. Izuku punched the air as Royal Ripper's blades approached, pushing him away and preventing the quick kill. Once more, he moved behind the monster and kicked it quickly in the side. The Royal Ripper crashed into a parked vehicle. After that, Bug God came along and punched him. Izuku's quick reflexes caused the teenager to turn around and strike the monster in the face. A collision that pushed them both back was the outcome. Luckily, Izuku flipped and landed on his feet, which caused him to skid back. The same was nearly true for Bug God, whom Royal Ripper encountered. The Royal Ripper laughed and remarked, "The kid's really something. But that until now was just a play. Now we're going to get a bit serious." Big God continued. Izuku swallowed and made an effort to clench his fist. When he tried, he winced and turned back to face the monsters. It was obviously risky to fight two thick-bodied monsters with the same fist. "I don't believe I can defeat them by myself." However, he thought, Perhaps I can postpone things until a pro hero shows up. Royal Ripper exclaimed, "Let's kill him." And the two monsters charged directly at the teenager. Izuku fought through the pain shooting through his fist while focusing. Pulling his arm back, Full Cowling danced wildly across it. One for all. 100%. They approached. Detriot SMAS. Something unexpected happened to stop his attack. Something fell to the ground, breaking the concrete road beneath it and encircling it with a cloud of dust. He quickly grabbed Bug God and Royal Ripper by the neck, whoever it was. Incinerate. He became unmistakably himself. Given his monotone voice, Izuku recognized him even as the dust cloud dissipated. When the demon cyborg arrived on the scene, he had a new appearance. Genos. Bug God kicked the demon cyborg in the side as his palms were getting hot. It released the two monsters and pushed him back. Genos said, turning back to face Izuku. "Leave now. This is not your fight." Izuku gave a nod and sprinted in young Psycho's direction. But Royal Ripper didn't want the teenager to go. "Like hell I'll let you." The blast shot was aimed at his head, and he barely avoided it. He skidded back and growled at Genos, who had his arm outstretched, smoking in his palm. "I don't fully understand the situation, but I'm certain about the fact that I shall be eliminating the both of you." Bug God growled and tightened his muscles, saying, "Don't take us lightly, demon cyborg. We'll kill you right where you stand." He then released another energy blast, saying, "I doubt that." Izuku arrived at a park while young Psychos continued to hold him. The entire area was empty, much like the streets. That was advantageous to the villain's younger self. They might have been safe now. As Izuku ran, he inquired, "You said Tatsumaki is at this direction?" "Yes." Young Psychos nodded, confirming, "I can sense her presence. She explained some time ago that only a strong Esper could heal her." Tatsumaki's ability to do that was immediately apparent to Izuku. She explained that she was willing to die as the reason she hadn't asked the other Esper. When Izuku said, "I won't accept it," she heard it. "You did nothing wrong to have someone kill you. That's why, I'll convince Tatsumaki to strengthen you, because I know you're a good person." She felt somewhat hopeful and nearly moved. If she survived, she might be able to make amends by helping the heroes put an end to the Monster Association. But when a well-known figure landed in front of them, that thought was dashed. Neither Genos nor the monsters he was battling were to blame. In fact, it was the one individual they wished to avoid seeing again. As he smiled, Adult Psychos remarked, "This is as far as you go, children. Now, hand over what is mine." Izuku refused to back down, but he couldn't resist gulping down some saliva. He was determined not to give the girl on his back up to a monster. He said gravely, "I'm not going to do that." Psychos as an adult was somewhat impressed. Out of all the heroes she had observed over the years, only one immediately sprang to mind. She felt nostalgic about the fact that she had enough time. She found it kind of funny. "You're so much like him. Always going up against the odds, pushing yourself past your limit time and time again, and being so reckless." She replied, as expected from the apprentice of the Caped Baldy. That realization shocked everyone watching the scene with a television. That news drop surprised even his mother, who had since calmed down. It was unexpected that her son was the number 3 pro hero's apprentice. Izuku made the decision to ignore it. He was never regarded as an apprentice by Saitama. For that, he had Genos already. However, the pro hero's only teacher-related action was to teach him his training routine. All Might was his sole master, but he couldn't simply declare it for everyone to hear. He said bluntly, "I just don't get it. Why are you like this? Psychos here is a good person that wants to help everyone. You two even went to UA and made friends with Saitama and Mount Lady. So why did you turn out like this? You almost killed Mount Lady and killed Child Emperor." Young Psychos warned, "Izuku, enough. You don't want to anger her." To the surprise of the two teenagers, Adult Psychos responded, "Anger me? No, he's not doing that. In fact, I'm quite amused by your obliviousness. Must I repeat myself, or is it possible my message hadn't been clear? Nonetheless, I won't walk away from my goal to exterminate the filth that is humanity. For the survival of this planet, I must do this." "Survival, Psychos," the young one replied. Seeing the future has twisted her mind. She only sees herself as the savior of the earth, because she witnessed its destruction. Izuku couldn't speak, and then, with a sense of urgency, he turned back to Adult Psychos. Perhaps this other version of her could be persuaded to join them. Then he had an idea and scowled. Then you can join the heroes. If the Earth really gets destroyed, then we should join forces to stop it from happening. That's right, you killed some people just a while ago. If only there was a way to save the world from getting destroyed. He was shaken by adult Psychos' response. There's a way, and that's through the destruction of the human race. He briefly thought he could have communicated with her, but her grave expression told him otherwise. Poor naive child, just what has Uwa been feeding you? Do you think I hadn't considered the heroes? I was just like you, believing in the best in others, only to then regret what I've been blind to see. I'm just trying to help. Help, you say. Her quirk came on in rage, and the wind picked up and the skies grew darker. It spread so widely that people like Tatsumaki, All Might, Saitama, Mount Lady, and King took notice of it. Adult Psychos, however, wasn't finished. The ground itself rose and started to engulf her completely. Her voice was heard even then. You have no idea about the world of heroes is really like. What do you think the idea of heroism truly started? Surely, it started with idealistic ideas, but humans today have changed, to the point that being a hero is a fucking job. Tell me, what kind of heroes put pressure on a teenage girl for doing what should be considered right? What kind of world forces her to attend a school she doesn't want to go? Is she referring to Tatsumaki? Izuku thought as he felt a wave of fear rising within him. The enormous figure in front of him caused him to gasp. With a cyclops eye and a humanoid body, Psychos, devoured by the earth, stood 12 feet tall as a representation of the ground she had once stood on. All I want is to save this world that humanity has continued to poison. But somehow I'm the villain. Curse this world of man. Fuck their hypocrisy and lies. As long as there's still an ounce of breath in my body, I'll destroy the very humans that hunt my kind down. Psychos then slammed her enormous arms to the floor. The result was a shockwave that sent young Psychos and Izuku flying a few feet away. Both of them fell to the ground as adult Psychos came toward them. Are your ideals as true as you believe, or are they things you feed yourself to claim? Answer me, Midoriya. Izuku moaned as he stood back up again. The pain from the earlier fights was still in his arm. Young Psychos watched him fearfully and with great concern. He refused to stay down, even when she pleaded with him in a whisper. Now that full cowling was in effect, he turned to face the dragon-level monster with a determined expression. He clenched his fist and gave a loud huff. I believe what is right. I know I'm not anywhere experienced as the heroes, and maybe I'm not able to see the full picture like you. But I won't back down, no matter the cause. A true hero will not give up, even when danger is right in front of him. Then you shall die before the eyes of those who love you. Just like Tatsumaki's mother. Tatsumaki's mother. Watch out, Izuku, yelled young Psychos. The teenager hardly escaped Psychos' rock-shaped fist. He landed on his right, turned to face her, clenched his fist once more, and pumped some energy into that area of his body. One for all. 1,000,000%. Adult Psychos yelled, Midoriya, and leapt for him. Izuku struck her with his punch. Detriot smash. When their fists collided, amazing power was released. A powerful wind that threatened to carry anyone away was created by a strong shockwave that swept through the air and earth. Already, park benches and trees were being flung into the air. Unfortunately, Izuku was unable to keep up as Psychos' rock body ate up his fist and started pressing down on him. What the matter, Midoriya? Where's the bravado from earlier? Izuku continued to strive for more. In an attempt to keep up with adult Psychos, his flesh grew as his shoe-covered feet dug through the ground. The more he pushed himself, the more his clothes started to tear. However, none of that altered the result. Because of her superior strength, Psychos played with him by applying pressure. Izuku was crying uncontrollably as he fought back because it hurt so much. It's going to be fine. Everything will be fine, he said, summoning the last of his remaining courage. Then he shouted, turning back to young Psychos. While I'm keeping her busy, you should just fly away. Fly away. Still trying to act cool, are you? You really are like the Caped Baldy. Now show me how you bleed. Izuku focused all of his attention on her and used what strength he still had. Unfortunately, though, even that had no effect. He could no longer bear the pressure, and parts of his skin sliced open. The enormous weight pressing down on him was causing his knee and back to scream in agony. I can't win. This is where I will die. I apologize, Mother. I'm sorry. All Might. Tatsumaki. Tatsumaki. Die now. She pulled away and slammed her massive fists down on his body to end it. Full cowling subsided, and Izuku's eyes closed as darkness greeted him. Am I Midoriya? Young Psychos let out a startled cry. She was shocked by what she saw. Izuku had risked his life for her while she was lying on the ground. It shouldn't have happened, but it did, and she saw it. Young Psychos mumbled, "Damn you," as tears started to fall from her eyes and she slowly got up off the ground. Oh, you're able to stand now. As he passed Izuku's body, adult Psychos inquired, "I've enjoyed myself. It won't be long now before we're united once more." Psychos raised her hand directly at the enormous crater and directed her quirk into that arm, muttering, "I," as she glared at the monster before her. "I detest what I've turned into. Worst of all, though, I detest what I have permitted to occur thus far. This is why it must be the one good thing I can do, even if it's the last thing I have left to do." Psychos the adult was perplexed. "What are you?" A familiar crackling interrupted her, and she looked back, startled to see full cowling awakened and Izuku's body slowly rising. The voice of Izuku screamed louder, "There's no way, I'm going to let you kill her. I am impossible, you ought to be dead unless." The evil Esper had an epiphany. She snarled and turned back to the younger her. "You protected some of the impact. You have been protecting him from the sidelines. Is Child Emperor still alive? Well, I suppose I've been busted." Young Psychos grinned and said, "Like Midoriya, I may be shy sometimes, but I'm not going to stand by and watch people suffer any longer. I've had enough." She then swung a punch at the Esper, but before it could land, Izuku's left hand stopped it. Young Psychos didn't change her expression. In fact, she was confident in what would happen next. "What? Describe how you arrived there." "One for all. Top performance." She was shocked by his next move, as Izuku instantly broke her arm with just his fingers. "Califoniaaa." He let out a loud cry and drew back his right fist, saying, "Detriot Smaaash." She was about to turn to face him when he appeared in front of her, his fist slamming it directly into her face. His fist shattered the entire humanoid rock body she had created, throwing her human form back and then skidding to a stop. The effect of his strength was amazing. Psychos' scream was loud as she and everything in her path were instantly cleared away, sending trees, the ground, and pretty much everything flying, and when the shockwave ended, they could see the very end of the park. Incredible," young Psychos mumbled as she lay on the ground, staring at Izuku's back after being knocked down by the shockwave of his punch. As she gazed at her, she couldn't help but recall the vision she had seen. A young man standing in a clearly destroyed city, his fists on his hips, a victorious grin on his face, and his green eyes and hair, which were instantly recognizable as he turned his head to face her with a smile that was All Might-like. "You no longer have to be afraid. I'm here," he declared. He is him. The person I saw then. The person who will save the world. Midoriya Izuku, the strongest pro-hero. With a loud battle cry and a march of his foot on the ground, the teenager declared that he had finally triumphed after a lot of suffering. Young Psychos was pleased as she stumbled back onto her feet. The attempt wasn't as simple as she had hoped. She fell because her knees wobbled, but Izuku caught her with his left arm. His right arm was severely broken, so he couldn't really use it for the time being. "Are you okay?" Izuku inquired. "Yes, I feel a little weak. The majority of my remaining strength was used to save you and give you that boost. It will be all right, though." They have arrived. Saitama arrived at the scene by stomping at the ground from what appeared to be above, making it clear to Izuku what she meant before he could question it. "Is everyone secure?" he said while coming out of the dust cloud he made. Looking serious, he saw what Izuku's punch had caused and looked at the boy. "Did you do that?" Izuku nodded. "Yes." He gave him the thumbs up and said, "Nice." If it weren't for a slap on the head, Izuku probably would have reciprocated, but instead he yelled and turned around to see Tatsumaki wearing a frustrated expression. "Avoid frightening your mother in that manner once more. You get it?" He bowed his head apologetically and said, Sure. I'm sorry for bothering you like that, Tatsumaki. But could you please assist her?" After giving young Psychos a quick glance and huffing, the green-haired Esper turned her head away and folded her arms. "You want me to assist that thing? That is beyond my wildest expectations." However, her tone softened and she blushed as she looked at him uneasily. "But for you, I guess I can look the other way," she said. "Really?" Izuku gave her a joyful smile and said, Thank you, Tatsumaki. The girl could swear her heart skipped a beat when he smiled, but she quickly averted her gaze and huffed a little stubbornly to cover it up. Whatever. Mount Lady appeared in her giant form with King and All Might on his shoulder, and the flying monster that Psychos used to televise everything just then crashed to the ground, dying on impact. Have we overlooked anything? Mount Lady looked down and asked. I made it a bit late, All Might said after jumping down from the shoulder and landing next to Izuku and Psychos. He then got down on one knee to give them a straight look. Apologies won't make that go away. But I'm proud of what you two accomplished. Well done, my boy, Midoriya. The same is true for you, Psychos. You don't need to say that, All Might. Psychos responded cautiously, I just wanted to do something right. As he patted her on the head, he said, I know, and that's okay. But that shouldn't be void of praise. I suppose so, she smiled after she overcame her actions. Before she abruptly pushed Izuku to the ground, everything appeared to be fine. He looked up at her in confusion, but as soon as he saw a lightning bolt pass through her stomach, he was overcome with fear and shock. It was not him who experienced this emotion. The sudden and completely unexpected kill left everyone, including Tatsumaki and All Might, perplexed and shocked. The body of young Psychos struck the ground with force, and she lay there severely injured. Psychos. Mount Lady shrank back to her normal size in shock, forgetting King was on her shoulder. Surprisingly, the young man sat up after falling to the ground. Izuku, meanwhile, sat her up after overcoming his shock. Adult Psychos laughed heartily. She could only smile as she watched the entire scene from above them in her monster form, then she crossed her arms and took in the sights. The body of the young Psychos appeared to be phasing in and out of reality. She wasn't exactly human, so everyone there understood why. Her youthful appearance was merely a reflection of her previous good character. Unfortunately, it appeared that the body was nearing the end of its life. While in his arm, the weakening Esper inquired, Are you okay, Izuku? Izuku yelled at her, I should be asking you that question. He was not to blame. Her action startled and perplexed him. Why did you protect me? She could give several explanations for it. But time was not on her side anymore. I don't want you to die. Psychos. Mount Lady scooped her out of Izuku's arm while kneeling beside her. There's a way we can fix this, right? There has to be a way. With a faintly reassuring tone, Psychos stated, you don't need to worry about that, you. Astonished, Mount Lady said, you said my first name. She had never called the girl by her first name since she had known her. It was strange and quite depressing. She gave a feeble smile. Yes, I'm so glad, I could do that, even if it's for the last time. I'm sorry for dying right in your arms. Don't talk like that, you're not going to die. Izuku faced Tatsumaki once more. You have to save her, please. She's about to die. Tatsumaki frowned. I can't, she also experienced sadness. With her body so weak now, if I tried to using my quirk, I'll only speed up the process. That's enough, said young Psychos. She smiled weakly as she said, I never thought I would be able to see you, Saitama, or King, but I got to see that chance and have so much fun. That alone makes me happy. Psychos, King announced as he walked toward her. His hands trembled as he fell to his knees. You're kidding, right? This is like one of those jokes you played, right? You're not really dying, right? I'm sorry, King, but it's for real this time. King yelled, damn it, and slammed his fists into the floor. His eyes were already streaming down his cheeks. Don't be so sad, King. I want to see that stiff unchanged face you always made. It was so scary at the first few times, but I've actually grown to like it. So, don't be sad. She followed by placing her hand on his cheek. King turned to face her, snorting as the tears seemed to run out of control. Fuck that, how can I not be sad? He exclaimed. I don't care about any of that. You're Psychos and our friend that we love and care about. We don't want you to die. So of course, I'll be sad. Even the strongest man on earth will cry if his friend is dying. Saitama tensed and averted his gaze. His face was shrouded in its own mystery, and no one knew what it was. King clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, and he could hear him sobbing. He couldn't bring himself to confront his dying friend for some reason. She turned her gaze from King to Mount Lady. Can you open your hand for a moment? You said, sure, and followed instructions. Psychos placed something on Mount Lady's palm after taking it out of the right pocket of her hoodie. Then she closed the woman's hand and smiled and winked at her through teary eyes. Promise not to look at it until tomorrow. I'll be rooting for the both of you, I swear. Mount Lady swallowed her saliva and nodded, not quite understanding. Even she was unable to stop the tears from streaming out after that. All I wanted was to help the Espers live in peace with everyone. She was at her breaking point. She let her body burn into blue particles in the air, then turned her head away with a final gasp of breath. Everyone wept in silence as she passed away. Please, protect the future. She said those final words, and then there was silence. The silence was broken by monster psychos, who spoke from above. How pathetic. You humans moan over such a pale imitation of me. Mount Lady muttered, you, and got back up. She screamed, her face smeared with tears and rage. You bitch. You killed Psychos. How could you do something so awful? Psychos. But I am Psychos, or has she fooled you too, Mount Lady? Stop calling yourself that. You're not Psychos. You're just a monster that took over her body. I hate you. Bring back my Psychos. Bring her back. That smile of Psychos vanished. Now I'm kind of offended. Not only am I called in such a way, but that pale imitation somehow avoided rejoining with me. Of course she did. Psychos has always been the smartest amongst us, even when she was reluctant at times. That's why you will never be Psychos, because she cared for everyone. The lips of an adult Psychos formed a snarl. Then she opened her palm, causing lightning to rise, and said, your delusions on that girl are irrelevant to me. If you believe in that piece of shit so much, maybe you should be with her for eternity. That shall be your fate. When she took the shot, she didn't hold anything back. Long before she blinked, Mount Lady ought to have died. To everyone's surprise, however, Saitama blocked her path and struck the lightning. Then I'm going to punch fate right in its fucking face. Psychos barely had time to get out of the way before she was struck by his lightning-fast punch. She was nevertheless flung to the ground as Saitama's punch dispelled all of the ominous clouds over the city and greeted the sun's rays once more. I've failed Psychos twice in life, but I won't fail her in death. Saitama felt more invigorated than he had in a long time. However, he didn't find the excitement and thrill he was seeking. His eyes were filled with rage, and he gritted his teeth as tears streamed down his cheeks. He thought about those final words she said. Please, safeguard the future. His hands were clenched into fists as he stood. He was going to make sure he completed what he had failed to do years before with them. I will, I promise. Saitama had heroes as role models when he was younger. His child self stared in wonder and dreamed of becoming a pro hero someday when he saw them go out into the world and stop the monsters and villains. Therefore, he was taken aback to learn that he had no quirk. Everyone knew that having a cool quirk is a prerequisite for being a hero. When Saitama heard the news, she was devastated. His entire world seemed to have fallen apart. Even though he didn't recall every detail of the day, he was relieved to never recall that day in particular based only on that feeling. But he continued to rebel against the norm. He didn't think that his desire to become a pro hero would be prevented by fate. He therefore devised a training schedule and set out to fortify both his body and mind. Every time he declared his intention to become a pro hero, he was ridiculed. He questioned whether they would dare to bring that up now. Nobody wants to be around someone who made fun of a well-known hero. To get right to the point, Saitama remained motivated despite the lack of support from others. His parents were decent individuals, but it makes sense that they didn't see the wider picture. It was well known in society that if you didn't have a quirk, you were doomed to be a hero. But Saitama was not going to give up. Perhaps it was his own obstinacy, but he refused to give up. He barely made it into UA after strengthening his muscles. However, for a strange person like him, the tasks in UA were challenging. Saitama was pushed to the limit with each test, and nearly all of them ended with him passing out. The fact that he was accepted into UA was a miracle in and of itself, despite the teacher's constant insistence that he quit. But he wasn't going to let that stop him. He continued to train while maintaining his dream. Then Crabland, the crab monster, appeared. It was Saitama's first time facing a monster. His motivation and willpower therefore collapsed when he found himself in a situation that he had witnessed innumerable heroes in. Despite being a tiger, wolf-level threat, the monster was powerful and frightening. As far as he was concerned, Saitama never had a chance. She arrived at the scene just as he was about to pass away. Psychos, Aua Esper rescued Saitama from both the monster and his own uncertainties. His courage and motivation were restored by the way she retaliated against Crabland, despite the fact that he was obviously stronger. It was she who helped him defeat Crabland. She owed him a great deal. He probably wouldn't have developed into the hero he is now if it weren't for her. He therefore never really harbored resentment toward her, even after she turned evil and nearly killed you. He never blamed you, even after his friendship with her vanished and he was blacklisted by his classmates. However, there was a point at which he blamed her, but he also didn't. Psychos was extremely delighted to return. Now the group was back together. Perhaps they could return to the good old days, Saitama thought. Perhaps not being UA students, but simply being best friends and battling monsters. However, a number of events complicated matters. The psychos that Saitama knew and loved were gone before his mind could fully process what had just transpired. His mind refused to accept that he would lose her, even after she said goodbye. They were unable to return to their previous state. She was to blame for Psycho's death. Yu was next in line to be killed by evil psychos. There was no way to know if All Might would have responded before she could. Saitama's feelings overcame him to keep Yu safe. He had not been so angry in a long time, and now he knew who he would vent his anger on. Saitama, Yu said in a quiet, frightened voice. Even though he was facing away from her, he exuded a poisonous, unseen aura. Yu has previously witnessed Saitama in a rage, but never in this manner. As Psychos got to her feet, he was simply glaring at her. Perhaps he was attempting to control his rage. It was unclear whether Saitama had a limit. He has demonstrated in previous achievements that he can defeat dragon-level monsters with merely a plain face. Therefore, it was impossible to predict what he might do when he was so furious. It took Psychos a moment to regain her balance after she stood up. She had almost been struck by Saitama's counterattack. The deadly aura emanating from Saitama was so palpable to her that it was almost frightening. Saitama was the one of the heroes she stayed away from during combat. She wanted to help Garo develop because she wanted him to defeat Saitama on her behalf. However, she made a mistake and allowed her feelings to control her. She must now figure out how to get through this. Saitama said in a monotone, "King, Toshinori, you, take the kids away from here." Nothing more needed to be said. Despite knowing that, they were all unable to avoid feeling conflicted on an emotional level. Saitama's voice had become more solemn. He talked in a way that was almost menacing. All Might didn't try to touch him. He knew better than anyone what it was like to face the person who killed someone close to him. So he jumped out of the way and took Izuku and Tatsumaki under his arms. In protest, Tatsumaki said, "Hey, let me go." However, she didn't really try to escape his hold. King and Mount Lady were the only ones left, and they were going to depart. King yelled, "Avenge her, Saitama," and fled. Yu joined King, adding, "Make that bitch regret what she did." Saitama, the pro-hero, and monster psychos were the only ones left. She said, somewhat amused, "Make me regret." Such childish words to say. But this is quite surprising. You're so quiet. The fact you're just standing there means you're trying to hold back. Am I right? Taking a deep breath, Saitama stepped forward. The next thing she knew, Psychos was standing right in front of her, his fist looming enormously over her face. A strong shockwave traveled that way when the arm straightened. The wind that accompanied that blow whipped through the atmosphere and the earth. When they had both calmed down, all that was left was a massive trench that cut through the city and the park, leveling any buildings within its boundaries. Psychos just managed to get out of the way. Her skin and dress had numerous injuries from head to toe, despite the fact that it was only a split second. She clutched at her face, her wings barely keeping her aloft. The blood was dripping steadily. Fuck, she thought painfully, I barely made it out of there. They would have perished there if it had been any other monster. Such a blow would kill even the Cadres. However, I never imagined that he would launch such an attack and endanger other people's lives. Unless. She looked back, gasping. There were no signs of people in that direction when she used her psychic influence. How? Is there nobody around? How in the world is that Po? Saitama interrupted her as she looked down and saw him approaching her directly. He was moving too quickly for her to respond, and her instinct took over, so she pushed her arms down and exclaimed, "Gravity, 300 times." Psycho smiled as it occurred to her that perhaps she could escape this alive. Gravity in that specific location came straight down at the pro-hero, enough to knock him to the ground on his back and shatter the earth there. Fear gripped her, something she hadn't experienced since the last time she faced Saitama, when the hero had just acquired his power and purposefully held back, but this time he was more than determined to kill her. She saw Saitama casually getting up, as if her gravity power had no effect. Saitama, don't underestimate me. 500 times gravity. The earth beneath Saitama shattered and buried the majority of his legs, but it did nothing to stop him from getting down. As if he were a monster skulking out of a hole, Saitama used his arms and legs to climb on, his deadly aura growing stronger. Gravity. 1,000 times. Saitama was completely submerged when the earth beneath him gave way, and Psycho's face lit up with relief as she continued to apply gravity to that spot while laughing uncontrollably. Yeah, God is not you. Because you are only a human, you are liable too. But before she could finish, the entire park and the 10 miles or so surrounding it were hurled into the air, along with buildings, cars, and pretty much everything else, with the dirt itself clouding the sky. Yu and King were struggling to stay alive, and it felt like the end of the world to them. Good thing the pilot was a military-based pilot, or else they'd be in serious trouble. They were hanging tight for their lives on a helicopter as the flying machine attempted to navigate from the flying building, the raining dirt, and pretty much anything within their part. Even in her giant form, Yu would not have survived such a scene on the ground, so she screamed and held onto her seatbelt. Saitama. A bit of hold back. She let out a scream. He is holding back. Yu turned to face King. She was taken aback by his statement and saw a mixture of sternness and fear on his face. Not by a small amount. His strength truly has no boundaries, so he's holding back a lot. Yu couldn't understand him at all, and although she hoped he was bluffing, she knew he was telling the truth. Psycho screamed when she was launched so far above the clouds, and the last she remembered was when the ground erupted all around her. She was certain that Saitama was responsible, and the fact that she hadn't been launched into space meant that he was unconsciously being cautious. Her monster instincts told her to run from the scene, but she managed to regain control and stopped in midair, panting heavily as she tried to analyze her next move, and her chance was open because Saitama was nowhere to be seen. However, that did not mean the fight was yet over. Before seeing them for herself, Psycho sensed incoming objects, which included small items like TVs, pieces of rock, and other objects, as well as large objects like trees and cars. Saitama was behind them all, so she responded by extending her arm and launching the lightning from her palms, because there was no way these things were coming on their own. When her attack connected, it exploded everything that was thrown at her, including the trees, oddly enough beds, and fire hydrants. In addition to having a clear view of her, Saitama was clearly moving faster than usual when he threw these items after her. Because she was a dragon-level monster, Psychos would have little trouble protecting herself, but even though they weren't direct, her body had taken a serious beating, and the only reason she survived this was sheer luck and quick thinking. Her efforts lasted only a few seconds before her body became too exhausted, so she dropped her guard and was slammed by a bus, which propelled her upwards, and she looked like a bug splattered on the glass, except with red blood all over it. She opened her eyes weakly and was startled to see a familiar face entering the bus. Saitama was coming directly at her, defying psychics and common sense. He took a position and threw back his fist. Psychos knew what was going to happen and closed her eyes, bracing for the worst. Saitama's punch sent a powerful wind that tore through the bus and sent her flying out of the Earth's orbit itself with blood flying out of her mouth as her heavily beaten and battered body floated in space, and she realized that her silent plea had been ignored. He is incredibly strong. Too strong. She screamed in agony, but it was inaudible because she was in the void of space, and when she struck something, it was the surface of Mars, which made her body hurt even more. She caused a huge crater, and she was unable to move her own limbs. Saitama stopped her when he crashed directly into her. But none that seemed to matter. She hardly saw the pro-hero before he landed above her, and when his feet touched the ground of Mars, the ground itself crumbled and broke apart, allowing Psychos's body to sink inside before Saitama's hand, which was gripping her throat, pulled it out. I detest having this feeling. I'm feeling angry and hurt. His rage was unlike anything Psychos had ever seen, and she gasped as he raised his right hand, transformed it into a fist, and then drew it back as he glared at her with eyes full of hatred. I feel like my entire world is just an egg ever since I got strong. I have to be careful all the time to avoid breaking anything or making someone into nothing more than a pool of blood. Psycho swiftly transformed back into a human and slipped out, stumbling to get her bearings and tried to fly away, but Saitama grabbed her ankle and slammed her to the ground as fear appeared on her face. I never let myself become uncontrollable because I could kill someone in an instant. With no human in sight, Psychos had no reason to hold back, and it was clearer than ever that Saitama would not allow even a single atom of her to survive. She turned to him and used her right hand to shoot a psychic wave at his face as a last resort, but everything she released was a futile attempt, and the only thing that moved was Saitama's cape. The pro-hero then grabbed her hand and crushed it like an egg. With his fist poised to unleash its power, Saitama slammed her head to the ground, causing more cracks as his glove covered her mouth. But you brought King and you to tears. Worse than that, you stole my best friend. I will never forgive you, regardless of how much you resemble her. He clenched his fist after saying, "Killer move, serious series." She wanted to say something, but Saitama was tired of the whole thing. He saw that he was facing a monster, not a human, so he threw the last punch that made direct contact. Psychos tried to take his hand away from her mouth. Series punch. Few people on Earth would be aware of its destruction, but that doesn't mean it wasn't felt. Psychos couldn't survive the instant kill, and that included the planet Mars. Shockwaves traveled through the planet, reaching its core and destroying it in a matter of seconds. Every planet in that region was severely impacted, with some feeling the effects more than others, as Mars erupted into nothing more than tiny space rocks, sending an unseen shockwave through the solar system. The Earth's continents and oceans shook the planet. Waves crashed against the coasts, threatening to engulf neighboring towns. Volcanoes nearly erupted due to the Earth plate's slight shifting. Even the Earth's axis tilted slightly, making the planet appear ahead for a brief moment. The solar system appeared to be at peace when everything calmed down, with the exception of Mars, the once famous red planet that had been Earth's neighbor just a minute before. What was that? Fubuki asked, peering through the window of the kitchen. She hadn't left the city like her sister had, and Inko needed the emotional support because nobody really knew what happened after her son was last seen confronting monster psychos. The ground shook as she was helping to wash the dishes, and some of the glass plates and cups fell to the floor and broke. Whoever is in charge of this, they had better make sure they pay. Fubuki shouted in her mind. Inko had just finished cleaning up when the doorbell rang, so she went to answer it and saw who was standing there, a woman in a feminine business suit, with short blonde hair and blue eyes. "Hello. I apologize if this comes as a shock, but is Fubuki in?" Inko was wary because she had never seen this person before and didn't know who she was, but Fubuki immediately recognized her when he walked up beside her. "Alice-sensei, are you here? I was really worried about you," she said with a sigh and a relieved smile. "Fubuki-chan. I thought I should come check on you because of your sister's recent behavior and the fact that school is closed." "All right, hold on, how were you aware of my presence?" "I heard from your small Fubuki group that you come here, or something. After I persuaded Lily that I needed to see how you were doing, she told me." After acknowledging that, Fubuki bowed her head and said, "Thank you, sensei, for your concern." "Thank you." Alice chuckled softly, saying, "It doesn't have to be that way. We're not at school." She then looked at Inko and held up her ID card, saying, "This is it. I apologize for not showing this sooner. I was just..." Assuring her with a smile, Inko said, "Oh no, it's fine. You must be a good teacher to be so concerned about her." "I am, indeed." After saying, "I'm glad you understand," she gestured over her shoulder and said, "I should go now. I need to get to some work." "Well, how about I take you to a taxi?" Alice scowled and said, "The way you say that makes me sound old, you know." I'm sorry." Fubuki bowed her head in apology. Alice laughed and said, "I was kidding. Lift your head, please. If you could escort me, I would be overjoyed." As instructed, Fubuki grinned broadly, and Inko had no issue with the apartment building's proximity to the streets, even remaining at the door to observe from the sidewalks as Fubuki led the way. "How about I get you a present?" Alice politely inquired. Not that the girl was agreeing to that readily, but the woman wanted to reward Fubuki, even though they hadn't called in a taxi yet. Fubuki hesitantly replied, "I don't know. Big sister told me to stay back in the apartment until she returns. I do not wish to defy her." Alice politely pressed, "But it won't be far away. As a teacher, I can't be seen hanging around a student for too long. I'll lose my job. However, I've come to the realization that I haven't adequately compensated you for." Before she could finish, A limousine pulled up right in front of them, startling both Fubuki and Alice when they saw a familiar face get out. The attention was expected, but time was running out, and Sweet Mask wasn't going to let things continue as they were. His face, which has been shown on television innumerable times, made his presence known to everyone nearby as well as to them. "If I were you, Alice-sensei, I would let that girl be," he said in a kind voice, but only the woman noticed the tinge of danger. Sweet Mask was so well known among the people that it would be odd if they simply walked away, but he paid them a little attention. He needed to play his cards right to avoid causalities. The sight of the famous hero, actor, and singer caused passers-by to stop, shriek, and murmur in awe. "Anyone, please continue with your business. All I'm doing is meeting a fan. Is there anything wrong with that?" He even sent them a charming smile to play it nice. Although Alice appeared unconvinced, Fubuki was both surprised and excited, and the onlookers were ultimately persuaded by his smile and honest demeanor. AA supporter. To be honest, Fubuki was at a loss for words when she asked, "Oh, how did you know?" "How come I wouldn't know? Now, how about you go back inside?" he asked charmingly, squatting to gaze at her. "I would like to discuss a cool event I want to plan with your esteemed sensei." Really? Her eyes were bright with excitement, and she was unable to conceal her joy as she clutched her fists to her neck. "Yes, so you should. Fubuki will not return," Alice said firmly. Her outburst startled Fubuki, who turned back to face her, but before she could ask what had happened, the woman grabbed her wrist and started to walk away. Sweet Mask wouldn't let them escape, glaring at her as he got in her way. "You know, as a hero, I can't ignore when an adult is being forceful with a child, especially when she isn't hers," he replied. "However, I'm not using force. I'm merely taking her as a reward for her good behavior in class and..." "Well, how about I drive you there? I can be your escort for..." he said, although it was becoming obvious that his gentle tone was faltering. "That's quite enough." A hand touched his shoulder, and Sweet Mask, who hadn't even heard the two tall, burly men behind him, looked over his shoulder and said, "Leave here before you cause any trouble." "You say it's trouble," Sweet Mask said and looked back at Alice. She was obviously trying to hide her grin. He snarled, "I was hoping to take them away from the populace. Fortunately, I have a backup plan," he thought, and then looked back at limousine. "Do it now. They've arrived." "What?" a male voice answered. "Mr. Arataka." Fubuki was taken aback when she saw him get out of the car and shut the door. Reagan, who also recognized her, was taken aback. He turned to Sweet Mask and said, "Oh, Fubuki, you're here. Hey, you didn't mention that kids will get involved," he said. "Humans cannot be exorcised. I'm not sure where you got this idea. We are spirit exorcisers. You got that, spirits. Furthermore, they're not mon." Blood was splattered on the floor before he could finish, and the cold expression on his face ignored the surprise of the onlookers, Fubuki, Mob, and Reagan. One of the two men's throats had just been cut, and Sweet Mask's fingers were covered in his blood. The man with him tried to punch Sweet Mask as the other fell to the ground, but in an instant, his arm was flying, and Sweet Mask then cut his stomach, knocking him to the ground with blood on it. He thought, "My master is too powerful. If I'm going to kill her, I have to do it before she can. I told Mob to attack Theshpirit, once I gave the signal. All he had to do was use a mental attack before she reacted. That way no one will be harmed." He was startled when a psychic bind abruptly redirected him to strike his car instead. He forced his head to look over and realized why. Fubuki had stepped in, as evidenced by her outstretched hands, which were weeping and terrified as she stared at him. I'm sorry, but I don't know why you would attack my sensei," she replied. "Go, kid, let me go and run. That woman is actually PSYKOS," he yelled as loudly as he could. When a hand fell on her shoulder, Fubuki's heart skipped a beat. Although she could only recall good psychos, she knew that evil psychos were someone she should avoid, as evidenced by the fact that her older sister, Tatsumaki, had battled that version. Sweet Mask, who was stronger than he appeared, broke through her psychic bind with ease before sprinting to clear her path. "Senator. Say." In all honesty, Fubuki was afraid, but she wanted to think he was mistaken, so she glanced over her shoulder at her. The men who accompanied her, though severely wounded, rose from the ground, their whole eyes glowing yellow as the same volts from the clouds dancing visibly around their bodies. She was wrong, though, when a sinister grin appeared on her face and the clouds suddenly darkened, with yellow lightning dancing about. You made quite the blunder, Sweet Mask. Psychos. Sweet Mask stormed toward her. He couldn't stop her in time. A massive lightning bolt came down from the dark clouds at that precise moment, followed by a strong wind and a shockwave that threw everyone in the area, including those in their cars, into the air and sent many items flying inside buildings, including streetlights and fire hydrants. When a black car crashed into Inko's apartment, she ducked just in time to avoid being hit, then screamed as the fierce wind ripped through her house. Two enormous monster silhouettes that resembled humanoids were standing upright outside. Fubuki was being thrown by the fierce winds when she was abruptly grabbed by a huge, grayish-brown hand. Monster Bakuzan smiled crazily at her, holding her in one of his forearms so that only her head was visible, and she was somewhat dazed, so she didn't realize what was happening. Luckily, Sweet Mask came to her aid. He landed on the side of a building and leapt off, using anything thrown at him as a platform to get closer. Despite the strong winds, he would later have to consider the extent of the damage and potential casualties. Sweet Mask has defeated dragon-level monsters. Although he isn't one of the top 10 heroes, he was far stronger than most of them, so he persisted, prepared to cut Bakuzan's arm off and save Fubuki. But Guketsu posed a greater threat, blocking the pro-hero's path and delivering a powerful punch with his fist that was too strong for Sweet Mask to withstand in the air, causing him to scream in agony as he was launched for miles. Guketsu's blow also sliced through buildings and between those streets, causing deadly destruction. Bakuzan. Their mission was successful. The monster heard his name and threw Fubuki upward, but Psychos, in her monster form, caught her and flew off without a second thought. Fubuki's mind was slowly opening up, recalling everything that had happened before she was taken away, and when she blinked, her vision improved and she could see her location. She struggled to escape the woman's clutches as Psychos held her so tightly, and when that failed, she tried using her quirk but found her psychic power ineffective. As the wind pushed against her face and hair, Fubuki uttered the words, "You lied to me. You lied to the class. My friends and everyone. I will not pardon you for that." Psychos said icily, "Like I care." With vile eyes, Fubuki growled at her, "So be it." After saying that, she inhaled deeply and spoke loudly, "Big sister Tatsumaki. I'm having problems. Please save me." Tatsumaki had just broken through the sound barrier when she suddenly came and punched her in the face, and Psychos was surprised by the blow and let go of Fubuki. Psychos knew why there had been a loud boom. Another battle between the two was about to begin when Tatsumaki grabbed her sister's arm and stomped down on Psychos' body, sending all three of them to the ground where a loud boom sounded a few miles away. The teen had to pull Sweet Mask's butler, the driver of the limousine that had crashed into an apartment building, out of his seat when a mob broke out. He noticed the enormous hole left by the vehicle that had been launched earlier, and when he reached the edge, he saw Bakuzan and Guketsu. "Master," he asked. His master was in danger, and Bakuzan started to come over to him with a snickering face. He glanced to the side and saw Reagan clinging to a streetlight that had managed to stay on the ground, albeit slightly tilted. 80% mob explosion. The monster detection system was setting off alarms throughout the city, and people were running for their lives, and nobody could hold them responsible for the panic given the recent announcements. "Get out! Get out!" Through speakers positioned throughout the city, a female voice exclaimed, "3 disaster level, dragon have been found in the city. Please seek refuge at the closest shelters that have been authorized by the government." Despite being a civilized monster, Psychos couldn't deny that it was at least amusing to hear people in a panic. She got to her feet with a slight smile on her face, feeling very good about the announcement that had been made. As an older sister, she was checking Tatsumaki's body for any injuries, but Fubuki reassured her that she was fine, but that didn't mean they were safe. She glanced ahead and saw them conversing. She remarked nonchalantly, "I must say, I didn't expect that you would appear so sudden." Tatsumaki stood in front of her sister, a frown forming on her lips. "You really pursued my sister. Don't believe that I won't murder you in your current position," Psychos boldly said, "Then come at me." She even waved her hand at her. Everyone was watching from the comfort of their homes or the various shelters in the city, but Tatsumaki and Fubuki were unaware that Psychos' minor monster, a small creature with wings and a cyclops eye, was watching the scene. Psychos disclosed, "You see, child, everything up until you arrived went exactly as I planned. My real objective was to kidnap your sister. However, with you, Saitama, and All Might present, it would be challenging. I therefore made an effort to attract my significant other in order to get your attention. However, I have to confess, I was surprised to see young Midoriya. One of the two things I hadn't anticipated was that. You're a bitch. The second thing that caught Tatsumaki off guard was that Psychos hadn't anticipated her showing up on the scene so quickly, but that wasn't what enraged Tatsumaki. She has been teased by the woman ever since she met Psychos, and the fact that it had happened again made her angry. Her emotions overcame her, and she jumped at her, activated her quirk, and punched her in the face. With a sigh, Psychos easily caught the fist with her hand, and the green-haired Esper's eyes widened in surprise. Before she knew it, Psychos had punched her so hard in the stomach that she screamed in pain and flew over Fubuki. "Be big sister," she let out a cry. Tatsumaki's body bounced on the ground twice before coming to a stop on her stomach, and although she had known her older sibling to be one of the strongest people in the world, she was shocked and horrified to witness her take such a blow. She sat up, cleaned the blood off her lips, and winced. She thought, what the hell was that? Monster Psychos disclosed, psychic channeling. I created a method that is exclusive to Espers. She then started to move in Fubuki's direction, saying, I came here just to retrieve your sister. It allows one to take the blunt of a psychic power and redirect it back at its user. However, since you're here, I might as well make up for my error and finish you. Tatsumaki stumbled back onto her feet and just snarled. I haven't forgotten what you did to my precious facility those years ago, said Psychos, laughing. That amazing peculiarity of yours ruined my hard work. Just by looking at you, it would seem nearly impossible to believe that you were nothing more than a lab rat. After all, your peculiarity has killed both humans and monsters. Even Tatsumaki's classmates couldn't hide their expressions from their various locations, and those who heard it were shocked. Some remained silent, but their facial expressions conveyed the same message. When Psychos extended her hand to the revered Fubuki, the girl flinched and fell to her back, but Psychos persisted in trying to win her back, fortunately failing, and Tatsumaki came and dragged her sister away. Do not contact my sister. At the top of a 4-story building, it was a magnificent display of power as she pushed her arm forward and let out a loud battle cry. In an instant, she released a powerful psychic wave that tore through anything within its path. There was a major issue, though, as the technique caused the monster Esper's hand to extend in defense, causing Tatsumaki's attacks to return with full force. Despite this, the girl persisted in fighting, pushing harder even as her feet were about to give out. Tatsumaki was ultimately unable to hold on, and she skidded back and abandoned her attack, letting go of Fubuki, who was now lying on the ground unconscious from the attack, and spitting blood out of her mouth before collapsing to her knees. Psychos laughed and said, So you survived that, huh? Don't worry, I won't kill you right away. Make me laugh the way you used to. Then and only then will I give you the tender embrace of death. Shut up. Psychos was shocked. Not by the response, but by the sudden surge in psychic power. When she saw Tatsumaki's green aura turn to flaming white, the Esper clenching the ground into fists, and her eyes turning completely white as she stood up. You've played tricks on us. Utilized us as if we were tools. Tortured us. Made us want to commit suicide on a daily basis. You took away our normal lives and turned us into your pets, which is all I wanted. Massive cracks appeared in the ground beneath her, and before Psychos knew it, the Esper was standing right in front of her, their eyes meeting, before she seized the monster's hand and crushed it. You returned to ruin my life just when it's finally coming together. Tatsumaki then punched the monster in the face, saying, Just go away and die. From their position in the steel-fortified shelters to those in nearby cities, people farther away felt the ground tremor as a massive dust cloud soared into the air and whirled like a tornado, easily tearing apart every building within 10 miles. All Might barely managed to save Fubuki in time, holding Izuku and the young girl's body against his chest to protect them, taking the brunt of Tatsumaki's blow to his back before letting them go and collapsing on his arms and knees as the battle came to a halt. He immediately vomited blood, all-powerful. Izuku gave his mentor a worried look. Check, on her. He let out a painful groan. After nodding in agreement, Izuku ran to the edge of the enormous hole that had now formed and peered down to see Tatsumaki crouching over Psychos' body, her fist buried in the woman's face. Tatsumaki. The teenager could not speak. He could hear his friend sobbing, and if he had been standing in front of her, he could have even seen her sobbing and shedding tears. What is this, I wonder? When Tatsumaki heard Psychos' voice, she gasped, and even though she had just been subjected to such a strong blow, she still managed to smile maniacally. Are those tears that I see real? She then laughed evilly and said, For one, your life would have been worse without me, because of your parents. You seem so worked over something so untrue, Tatsumaki. What? You weren't sold by your biological parents. However, they are two sides of the same coin. Shimura Nana, one for all's previous successor, is your mother. Tatsumaki and Izuku both gasped simultaneously. At the horizon was the sun. Except for a small park where a group of elementary school children were bullying someone, the atmosphere was largely peaceful. The group's boys and girls were standing in a circle, kicking the victim of bullying. Hatred and disgust were on their faces. Take that, damn vampire. That'll teach you to bite on Ki-chan. The victim of bullying was their age. They merely snickered and laughed when she pleaded for their pity. Hey, let go of my sister. Before the tallest child was struck in the face, the others turned around. The bullying ceased when he fell to the ground. The attacker, whose pupils were glowing red and who was panting furiously, caught everyone's attention. D-damn, the child swore and got to his feet. He opened his hand and thrust his arm forward. I'll make you fucking pay for that, dipshit. When he attempted to use his quirk, nothing emerged. He muttered, looking at his palm in confusion. What is going on? The vampire siblings, one girl muttered. Gazing at him, she took a sacred step back. The sister sucks your blood, and the brother sucks your quirk. The children instantly fled for their lives, screaming in terror. The boy watched as they walked away. He rubbed his eyes and blinked once they were nearly out of his line of sight. Maintaining his quirk for so long wasn't easy. Oni-chan, he gasped when he heard the voice of his younger twin sister. Before he ran to her place, his brotherly instincts took over. Her face had minor scratches and her clothes were filthy as she lay on the ground. He assisted her in sitting up while kneeling beside her. I'm so sorry, I went to get the ice cream, and then. It's okay. Oni-chan was just. The 6-year-old girl said, but she was cut off when she experienced a physical sensation. When her skin turned completely black and white, her brother gasped. Her knuckles sprouted tiny claws. She scowled. I couldn't control myself. That girl had a scrapped knee and before I knew it, I was tempted to lick it. Now these things you suppressed are back. Sorry. Don't apologize. I'm getting you to the Master Bang's dojo. She nodded feebly. It was 2 hours before she finally fell asleep in her room. There was no indication of her skin condition, and she was sleeping soundly. The latter was due to her older brother's red-eyed presence near the doorway. Shota. The boy blinked, taken by surprise. The condition of her skin gradually became apparent after he did that. Shota was startled when the door abruptly closed. He noticed Bang, his caretaker and master, to his right. It's getting late. A man needs his rest. He replied. Shota's head bowed. My apologies, Master Bang. But, I cannot leave my sister's side. Her condition is. When he put his hand on his shoulder, Bang interrupted him. I understand. You love your little sister very much, and you are concerned about her. But, using your quirk to suppress her quirk will only stop the inevitable. So, are you saying I should leave her, like our parents? Bang pulled his hand away and said, of course not. I am only saying you shouldn't stress yourself. You and your sister need to learn self-control. It is only then that the both of you can live happy lives. But, before he could finish, he paused. He was unable to object because of a lump in his throat. Bang stroked his chin after figuring out what he wanted to say. Ah, that's right. There was that one time she lost control here and grew wings. I have a feeling you are worried about that. Then, placing his hand on his shoulder, the elderly man guided him out of the room. Come, let's have some tea. I have quite the story to tell you. Current day. Bang's heart monitor was still beeping. He was still in a coma, but his condition was stable. Beside him was a chair occupied by Izawa. His face was unfazed as he stared at him. Master, it's been a very long time since you told me that. He sighed and thought, I wish you were here to tell me what to do now. I understand why the hero hunter captured you. Naturally, I had no chance if you couldn't defeat him. However, I had to keep my students safe. He was still thinking about the fight with Garo. Despite having the advantage, Izawa was no match for the hero hunter once he took the field because of his limited physical prowess. He didn't feel sorry for what had transpired. He was able to stand on his own 2 feet again after a month. Izawa-san. The man at the door caught the UA teacher's attention. Chiranko had just entered, and his expression was one of urgency. Izawa got up after realizing. He left the room after bowing to his unconscious master. Bang's older brother, Bomb, was waiting for him outside. It's been a long time, Izawa Shota. I haven't seen you for 20 years. Izawa grasped his right fist with his left palm and bowed to him. Bomb stood up straight, looked at him, and returned the greeting. He wanted to know more about the pro hero. How are you doing? I've been fine, Master Bomb. I'm sorry for what happened with Master Bang. It's fine, young one, or should I call you pro hero? You're certainly not as young as you were the last time we saw each other. Call me what you think fits. The look on Bomb's face changed. Undoubtedly, Izawa had changed from the boy he had known years before. He was more modest and stoic than before. Had it not been for something more, Bomb would have been impressed. Since their last encounter, Izawa has undoubtedly experienced his fair share of suffering. You're not just here for a courtesy visit, are you? Izawa said nothing. The old man's question was answered by his silence. I heard Garo attacked Ua and you got caught in the crossfire. Are you all right? I'm fine, though it has only been a month since then. I've recovered. Then why have you visited? Does it have to do with your sister's reappearance? Yes, Master Bomb. Bomb sighed. It was about that topic, he knew. He had watched the invasion on the school on TV, just like everyone else. Had he not been preoccupied with his own dojo at the time, he would have meddled. He wasn't a professional hero, anyway, and there were others who could help. He reminisced and stroked his long white beard, saying, quite the trouble she has caused. Hard to believe she was just a gentle girl who enjoyed being patted on the head. No doubt, this is an affair between you two, unless you came here to ask for my assistance. No, I just need your guidance. On his beard, Bomb's hand hesitated. Wise choice. The last time I accompanied someone in such a venture, he ended up in a coma. Izawa recognized the person he was talking about. Back in the day, when Garo was the hero hunter, Bang and Bomb came together to defeat him. Even though he was only a teenager at the time, he managed to hospitalize numerous heroes. They were initially taking the lead. Garo appeared on the verge of defeat. However, they made him stronger without realizing they were forcing him into a corner. Before they knew it, they were defeated, and Garo left the battlefield with more strength than when the battle began. Bomb sighed, recalling the encounter. He and Bang were placed into a long-lasting coma. When he awoke approximately a year ago, Bang had not yet fully recovered. With uncertainty regarding Izawa, Bomb remarked, but I don't see what I have to say. Those years ago, were you not the one who put her down? Izawa paused. Despite his best efforts to hide it, he was clearly conflicted. I couldn't bear to see her like that. As a big brother, I acted in what I believed was the right choice. But now I see that I failed her. If I had reacted smarter, she wouldn't be a part of the Monster Association. Bomb understood. I see. Then you should do what comes rationally. I've trained some professional heroes whose quirks wasn't enough for them. One thing I've noticed from some of them is their incentive to bring justice. But do they know what the term, justice, truly means? Is it simply to bring peace to society, and if so, how can they do it? Justice and peace can be used interchangeable. But at the end of the day, it depends on one's point of view. Izawa considered it. Chirenko stood by, perplexed by the ambiguous lesson. Izawa realized what he needed to do. He gave the elderly master a respectful bow. I understand now, thank you. Then he put his hand on his shoulder and said, you're welcome. Now go look for her. This is a family affair that only you can settle. After giving a nod, Izawa left. Before the young man asked the elderly man, Bomb and Chirenko observed his retreating back. What was that about? Smiling, Bomb said, and advise. Someone came to use apartment. He rapped on the door twice before one of the people inside opened it. All Might appeared in front of Genos, who was wearing an apron. Genos, good to see you. Is Mount Lady inside? He inquired. Genos opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off. From the kitchen, you called. Genos, who is that? All Might. Oh, let me in. I'm just boiling the water like you told me to. Hi, nodded Genos. He moved aside to let the professional athlete in. After thanking him, All Might sat down by a long couch. You and Genos joined him in the living room a minute later. Genos was watching as she sat across from him. You know, if it was any other day before we met, I would have been so excited to have you in my apartment. Sorry if that sounded weird to say. I just can't imagine having you seated in my apartment. She giggled nervously. You're fine, Mount Lady. Takayama. Huh, call me Takayama. I'm not in my hero costume right now. I see. Then call me Toshinori. It surprised you, and she wanted to object. She had second thoughts after seeing the sincere expression on his face. Then I will call you that. She flushed. Thank you. As All Might reached the purpose of his visit, the atmosphere suddenly changed. He asked, so, how has he been? Yu scowled and turned to face a door across the room. He still hasn't come out since that day. All Might then stammered when he saw Yu face to face, saying, I cannot blame him. Seeing his best friend die just like that must have been painful. I mean, for him. Psychos was your best friend too. I understand. But, I just wish he would talk to me. Doesn't he know how much this hurts too? Yu was about to cry when she wiped the tears away with her hands. All Might could sympathize with her suffering. He also lost a loved one, which brought back memories of the night that evil Psychos was last seen. All Might tried to get to his feet, but they stumbled. Tatsumaki was profoundly impacted by the enormous psychic attack, which made it difficult for him to maintain his All Might form. His eyes widened as he heard Psychos speak, just as he was about to give in, but he stopped himself. It's impossible. Tatsumaki is the daughter of a master. He pondered. It started to make sense now. Since Good Psychos was fully aware of the Esper's background, she was reluctant to tell him about Tatsumaki's parentage. Before All Might could turn, monster Psychos flew out of the hole and peered down at them. I must get going now, children. It would be a pain if the One Punch Man catches up to me. But don't worry, we shall see again when the time comes. Izuku yelled, hey, wait, but was disregarded. Spreading her wings, monster Psychos flew off into the distance. After a brief period of silence, Izuku abruptly stopped staring at the fleeing Esper. Glancing down at the hole, he leapt down to meet Tatsumaki. He reached her after his feet skidded all the way. Tatsumaki, Tatsuma, he put his hand on her shoulder, but she ignored it without turning around. A green aura enveloped her body before she took off in a different direction. All Might watched her go and tried to catch up with her. With a groan, he dropped to one knee, clutching an unconscious Fubuki. What exactly is happening? He pondered. Tatsumaki had not contacted Izuku or the pro-hero. While construction was underway at their apartment, Fubuki and Izuku were lodging at a hotel. However, that didn't really calm him down because he kept getting the same questions. How could Master have gotten those two to be her daughters? Hey, All Might jolted out of his reverie when he heard clicking. Yu had been snapping her fingers at his direction in an attempt to call him. Despite feeling embarrassed, the pro-hero decided not to dwell on it. He turned to go after saying, sorry, but I must be going now. Thank you for having me. Yu yelled, wait, as she rose from her seat and approached the top pro-hero. Why are you leaving? Do you know something about Saitama's condition? He glanced over his shoulder to see All Might at the door. No, but if there is, I will let you know. Please, continue to look after him. Saitama has been through quite a lot since he became a loner. I should know, I was one of the few company he had. Okay, there was no reason for you to stop the muscular hero from going. However, she couldn't help but stare at her best friend's door because she was feeling guilty and sad for him. She mumbled, Saitama, please get better, and allowed a single tear to fall down her cheek. I've got to say, I'm pretty happy you called. And here I thought you were trying to avoid me, Izawa-sensei. As she walked up to him, she added the title while giggling. Since he had requested her, Izawa was aware of who it was. Standing beside him, looking out over the city from the rooftop, was Ms. Joke, a fellow pro-hero and an old friend. Ms. Joke crossed her arms beneath her chest and remarked, so, I'm guessing you didn't call me just to hang out. Izawa got right to the heart of it. You saw the news, when Ua was invaded. I want to track down my sister, and... Ms. Joke arched an eyebrow at him and asked, and... Izawa never provided the response. She was expecting this from him, but he seemed colder than normal. She didn't find it as offensive, of course. Even though she hadn't heard of her until that day, Izawa respected his privacy by talking about a bad family member. Fine, I won't push you about it. But do you mind answering one thing? Why didn't you just have your pals at UA assist you? Ms. Joke wasn't particularly fond of UA. Although she wasn't envious, she didn't like the prestigious path that the well-liked school for future heroes had chosen. That was two questions. She gave a sheepish smile and said, "Was it? My bad." With a sigh, Izawa reached into his pocket. "I could have asked Present Mike to assist me, but this is a personal matter. Uwa is part of my job as a hero. I want to deal with this in my own way." "Oh, and what way would that be?" Izawa turned his dry eyes at her and went silent. It made Ms. Joke smile because she could understand. "I see now, but I've got to say, this isn't like you, at least, not for a long time. So will you help me?" She gave him a toothy smile. "Of course, and it just so happen, I know where your sister is at." After widening, Izawa's eyes regained their usual calm. "No offense, but, how do you know this?" Ms. Joke demonstrated her smartphone to him. "You really need to check the headlines more often." The headline, "Mosquito Girl Challenges Any Hero to the Death," was displayed on the screen, and the article was immediately beneath it. A child in another city was struggling with his teammates from middle school. While they were playing baseball, an unforeseen circumstance occurred. The cause was the child being battered on the ground. The children, on the other hand, thought he was completely awful. The leader shouted, "Do yourself a favor and just quit." Then, as his friends laughed, he spat on the child. The child didn't even try to look up at them. He let his cheek flow with the saliva. Until they left him alone, the other children continued to laugh. He was so silent that he didn't even realize someone was coming until she said something. How pitiful. He was cast a humanoid shadow. He saw a stunning woman with brown eyes, white hair, and red lips when he looked up. She was dressed in loose-fitting pants and a large white winter coat. She didn't intimidate the child in the least. He was embarrassed, if nothing else, to be in such a pathetic state in her presence. He yelled, "I'll just be leaving," and leapt back up. He bowed his head and ran. He was ashamed of what had transpired. He just wanted to cry and run as far away as he could. But then he struck something and landed on his butt. "I never said you could leave." The child looked up, recognizing the voice. It was the same woman, but his eyes widened before fear took over his face and body as she took off her coat and tore off her pants. With the exception of having a human-like face, she was Mosquito Girl. She stroked her face and remarked, "I detest human clothing and this face." Then her face turned the customary black and pale white, and she licked her lips. "But it does make me feel excited to corner a prey." She laughed. Prey. Then he realized he was the victim. His face started to perspire. Before a dejected smile appeared on his face, his life started to flash before his eyes. "So, this is where my life ends, huh? Well, I guess it was for the best." Mosquito Girl extended her hand to use her claws to knock him down. The child couldn't stand to see him die. He closed his eyes and thought, "My parents are gone, my uncle and auntie hate my existence, now that I think about it, why did I even bother?" He awaited his demise, but it never materialized. He glanced to see what his would-be killer was up to, but all he saw was her hand by her side, glaring down at him. He said, "You're not going to kill me." She walked past him and said, "I decide what I'm going to kill." The child saw her approach a baseball and bat that were lying on the ground. She used her claws to pick it up and her eyes to examine the ball. The child had the opportunity to flee, but instead he cautiously approached while maintaining a safe distance. "Most people would think twice approaching me, kid. You're literally the dumbest kid I've seen," she replied. "Hey, that's a new one. Most people just call me a freak." Curious of the moniker for him, Mosquito Girl glanced over her shoulder. "Think fast," she yelled. The child could hardly handle the bat that was thrown at him. He struggled to hold it in his hand before he managed to do so. She used her super strength to throw the ball at him before he could ask what she was trying to say. Despite stumbling backward and breaking his bat in two, the child managed to swing it away. "You don't have enhanced reflexes, or any psychical enhancement. Huh, you thought that was my quirk?" Mosquito Girl couldn't understand. Now he appeared at ease. She questioned, "Is that not your quirk?" The child gave a hesitant smile. "I wish. No, I'm nothing more than a freak with a quirk. I take away something precious to a person." "And what's that?" "Life." Mosquito Girl was now even more interested. "I hadn't noticed when I was watching you." "What?" He hadn't heard her well, perhaps because he was depressed. Mosquito Girl said, "Never mind. Not important," and went over to him. "I kind of want to see this quirk in action." The child backed away a few frightened steps. "Are you crazy? I don't want to kill anyone. You'll die, you know." "Oh," Mosquito Girl asked, tilting her head and grinning wickedly. You're concerned about me. I hope you know I haven't ruled out drinking your blood. I know, and I'm fine with it. All I ever do is hurt others. In a way, maybe I'm just a monster, like you. That's one other thing they call me. The eyes of Mosquito Girl grew wide. She experienced another flashback to her childhood with her brother. The people on the sidewalk where they were observing stayed away from them, and some of them gave her a repulsive glare. Monster, one man muttered. The young Izawa drew her near to him and shielded her ears from the names. She could still hear them calling her names, so it didn't really help. She returned to the present, grinned, and went up to the child. Before the fear took over and he turned to flee, he took a step back. He was thrown to the ground by Mosquito Girl, who took him by the hand. Please, don't make me use it. I don't want to use it. He was crying. I don't really know what to do with you. On one hand I'm hungry, and yet, my stomach hurts just thinking about taking your blood. You remind me so much of myself. What? I don't understand. Mosquito Girl looked at the blue eyes and sighed. I've come a long way to becoming a monster. Trust me, you're nowhere as a monster like I am. The child looked at the ground and muttered in a melancholy voice, You don't know that. My mother, she died at childbirth because of my quirk. My father, he disowned me after having to bear with my existence. My uncle and aunt only took me because the police didn't want to arrest a kid like me. I have no one to rely on. Good. The child gave her a look. You're not making a lot of sense. I do. You just don't know it yet. I have a brother. He's a nameless pro-hero in the eyes of the public. I used to rely on him like any little sister would, until today I can't get that bitter taste in my mouth. I trusted him, and in the end, he tossed me aside without a second thought. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't be. When Mosquito Girl burst out laughing, he was taken aback. She grinned and licked the air with her long tongue. Rest assured, I'll have him pay for what he did. We'll be together again, inside me. You're weird. With a childlike smile, the child burst out laughing. Breaking out of her reverie, Mosquito Girl grabbed him by the shirt and lifted him off the ground. What's so funny, kid? I can drink your blood right here and now. So, sorry, he said. Mosquito Girl kept glaring at him until she sighed and gave up. She let him drop to the ground on his butt, and she let go of him. The child yelled and reached for the sore spot. He was interrupted with a straight face by Mosquito Girl. Before you get the wrong idea, let me tell you this, kid. Monsters are creatures you should never cross. To them, humans are nothing but playthings. We kill because it's in our blood, and our nature. Anyone who doesn't have that, is no monster. The child fell silent, but his eyes gradually took on an expression of awe. He was unable to resist admiring her words. He could sort of see what she was getting at. No one had spoken to him so effectively without using profanity. Mosquito Girl concluded by saying, You're not a monster, so don't go around making yourself as one. You're human. That's all you are. I'm human. The sensation of water on his cheeks surprised him. They realized he was crying when he touched them. He had been deeply affected by those words, which brought back memories of something he had long believed to be lost. Mosquito Girl seemed unconcerned. While he continued to cry, she maintained her composure. The harder he tried to suppress the tears, the more they poured out. It took 10 minutes or so for him to settle down. He was standing again, grinning appreciatively. Thank you for the advice. My name is Kato. With a laugh, she spread her wings. Don't act like we're suddenly buddies, kid. I'm a monster, and that's all there is. So consider yourself lucky that I'm letting you live. She then took off from the ground and flew in her own direction. Kato stared at her vanishing form. He was even astounded by her flight. But when he saw her gone, his smile vanished. He saw a silhouette flying in her direction just as he was ready to lower his head. When 2 unidentified shots struck Mosquito Girl, she let out a painful scream. She landed back in the park with a crash. With a groan, she tried to raise herself up with her arms. Her attacker stomped to the ground at that precise moment, encircling him in a cloud of dust. Looks like I was able to find you, monster. To be fair, I had a little doubt that you would wander back to the very town you grew up as a human. I guess monsters really can be full of surprises. He concluded. When Mosquito Girl stood up again, she growled. The pro-hero's dust cloud lifted, revealing Wings, the 4th-ranked pro-hero, standing. This is the part where you're supposed to surrender, he stated. The Mosquito Girl chuckled. Wings watched as she prepared her wings for flight, unfazed. "Idiot, you heroes really are full of yourselves," she yelled. Wings' outburst did not affect him. HMPH. "Well, at least I'm not the one who put up a challenge for every hero to take on." "What? I didn't." Before Mosquito could finish, someone interrupted her. Wings, holding a long feather in his right hand, lunged at her. They clashed as a result of her using her long claw to defend herself. However, she was then given such a forceful kick to the stomach that she skidded back. When Mosquito Girl said, "That's some dirty move you pulled," she smiled. "But don't worry, I have plenty up my sleeve. You have nothing but your inevitable defeat." The girl from Mosquito licked her lips. Her desire to taste his blood was intense. When the battle started, Mosquito Girl was in the lead. With a snickering smile on her face, she chased after Wings, who was flying back. The battle was mostly obscured by trees, making it difficult to see from above. However, as the fighters moved from one location to another, loud clashes produced audible booms, causing the trees to burst and dust clouds to rise into the air. Wings skidded on the ground, protecting his chest with his arms. He was holding his feather blade, which he repeatedly used to protect himself from the female monster. With her in sight, he braced himself for the worst. He remained there with Mosquito Girl, refusing to leave. Long claws versus feathers, they clash and slash until they are finally separated by a simultaneous slash from both sides. The trees surrounding them were being cut to pieces in the meantime. Mosquito Girl had more work to do. Her face was hungry as she leapt at him. "What's the matter, pretty boy? Aren't you supposed to be a top pro hero? So, that's how it is. Huh." Once more, Wings folded his arms across his chest. He simultaneously spread his wings and let loose a powerful wind. The attack surprised Mosquito Girl, who was pushed back. She was about to retaliate, but Wings stabbed her in the stomach before she could do so. She grunted, "Guh." She spat blood from her mouth. With a growl, she tried to sever him with her claws. But the professional hero realized and retreated. Flapping his powerful wings against her, he landed on the ground. Several feathers were flung in her direction this time. Shit. Mosquito Girl's eyes grew wide as she tried to get past them. She failed and let out a painful cry as she was sliced all over. Other than her wings, every part of her was attacked by him. She considered a way out before launching herself into the sky. She was bleeding so much that she was unable to fly as quickly as she had hoped. She winced as the air touched her open wounds and exclaimed, "What the bloody hell was that? I barely made it out alive. I never said you could leave." Huh. The silhouette of Wings was facing the sun. He slashed her chest as he charged at her at Mach speed, holding both feather blades in his hands. She cried out in excruciating pain as she fell back into the woods, where a massive X-shaped gash had formed. The pain in every part of her body had increased. She was lying in a crater from her own fall, and the woods were also hurting from the impact. Trying to get on her hands and knees, she mumbled, "Damn it, I have to collect blood. I can't let it end here. I have to kill him. Oni-chan, I will kill. I won't let you." Mosquito Girl just managed to escape in time. Before Wings could stomp on her, she shoved herself aside. She was pushed back by the powerful dust cloud created by his landing. The dirt was flying everywhere, and she had to use her wrist to protect her eyes. At that moment, she could see Wings' hand. Grabbing her by the face, he slammed her against a tree, the first of many to fall, with a powerful wing flap. She was smashed into other trees by Wings. After a little while, he let her go and took off again. He hit the ground before she could get back up, sending a few feathers flying in her direction. When Mosquito Girl attempted to deflect the feathers away, she was only just able to stop her incomplete motion. She suffered additional injuries to her stomach and chest, and when her left arm was cut clean, she let out a loud, agonizing scream. Before two feathers pinned her legs, one feather stabbed her so severely that it held her to a tree, where she spat out more. The pro hero walked over to her, folding his wings. With so much blood all over her body and the feathers holding her to the tree, Mosquito Girl was in excruciating pain all the time. When she saw him standing in front of her, she growled. "Bastard, you were holding back. Is this some kind of sick game to you?" she screamed. Her glaring eyes and bloody lips did not deter Wings. He wasn't grinning either. "I held back because I assumed you or your master might have some trick. The last encounter humiliated. I couldn't believe a genius like myself fell for a trap like that. Worse of all, She broke my wings like they were nothing. There's nothing more I want than to track her down and kill her myself. PFF'd. Ha 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 ha. What's so funny? He asked calmly, hinting at a snarl. You're no threat to Psycho-sama. You should count yourself lucky to survive with just 2 pathetic broken wings. Wings heard footsteps and glanced around before he could speak. There were 5 pro heroes present. None of their faces rang familiar to him. Their occupation could be easily identified by their costumes. Pro Hero Glasses said, "We heard the commotion." As they got closer. In front of Mosquito Girl, the heroes were clearly visible. Death Gatling looked let down. In order to defeat Mosquito Girl, he had hoped to run into her with the other pro heroes. They were late, though, so all they could do was watch Wings spread his wings and give a phony yawn before heading out. "I'll leave the cleanup to you. Make sure she's apprehended correctly," he replied. Mosquito Girl exclaimed, You're leaving. At the start. Bastard. Finish what you started. I swear I'll gut you like the bird you are." Wings huffed as he glanced over his shoulder. Then he left her and the other heroes behind and flew into the sky. To speak, Mosquito Girl parted her lips. The only thing she wanted to do was yell at his cowardice. Her mouth refused to move, though, and she soon noticed that her vision was going black. Shit, she thought, I'm losing so much blood that I'm blacking out. She made an unsuccessful attempt to defend herself. The pro heroes gathered around her were the last thing she saw. Then her head sagged forward and her eyelids closed. When she opened her eyes again, her surroundings had completely changed. She was sitting up from the floor, and a staircase was beside her. She had a few cuts on her legs and her middle school uniform was a complete mess. Where am I? With a melancholy sigh, she recalled. She flinched and glanced down at her legs as she attempted to stand. Her bruises had not yet healed. Someone pushing her down the stairs was the last thing she recalled. She didn't really think about it. Her classmates attempted to murder her in a number of ways, including this one, without being discovered. Why am I still here at all? She pondered. She kind of wished the fall had killed her. She picked up her books and put them to her chest after shaking the emotion off. Oh, Oni-chan, you're here. Seeing him didn't seem to make her happy. If nothing else, she hoped he didn't see her like this. She turned away from him and shrugged off his hand on her shoulder as he ascended the stairs. Just leave me alone. I just fell. That's all, she replied. Izawa walked to her front and retorted, that's a lie, and you know it. But she wouldn't look at him. Please, tell me who did it. I can help you. You started to speak, but she stopped herself. However, she paused and looked away from him. I cannot, you'll just get in trouble with the teachers again. She fled before he could catch her when he attempted to do so. He called her name once more, but she ignored him. His younger sister was about to cry. She found it difficult to look at him. She sprinted past a male instructor. Before turning to face Shota, he glanced back at her vanishing figure. The teenager was frowning as he gazed at nothing at all. The instructor approached him and gave him a shoulder pat. You did your best, but it's clear as day that she doesn't belong here, Shota-kun. Ignoring her, Izawa sprinted in the direction his sister had gone. Until he was gone, the teacher watched him go. Before adjusting his glasses, he smirked and sighed. Rest assured, Izawa, in the House of Evolution, there is always space. Dr. Genos thought that and started to go upstairs. The rebirth of Izawa as his newest experiment, Mosquito Girl, is just a few days away. Izawa, sister of future hero Shota Izawa and soon-to-be villain Mosquito Girl, didn't care much about another day. The adolescent girl was currently in the shower, letting the warm water run down her bare body. It had been difficult for her yesterday, but that was normal for her. In actuality, she only truly found solace outside of school during these periods. There were moments when she simply wanted to be alone and free from the burden of others. It wouldn't last long, though. She had to get out eventually, even though this bathroom was only for her. So she shut off the faucet, exited the shower, and stood silently on the white tile floor. She let her thoughts return to the real world. While the majority of people either detested her existence or disapproved of her in general, only a small percentage of people like her. Although it was difficult, she had grown accustomed to it over the years. She bowed her head and sighed. Water poured down from her head, arms, and black hair, hitting the ground. She was already making tiny water puddles beneath her feet. I should just stop, she thought, because it's the weekend anyway. She always had these kinds of thoughts when she was feeling lonely. They were frightening at times and depressed at others. She would, however, be able to pull herself out of it and attempt to live another day. She eventually collected her thoughts once more and changed into a black skirt and white button-down shirt. The adolescent girl then pulled her long black hair into a ponytail and put on her pantyhose. She sighed after giving herself a thorough examination in the mirror. She was looking at her reflection once more, but all she saw was the face she detested the most, her own. She heard footsteps outside her room before her thoughts could take over. She decided after realizing to whom they belonged, she would do as she was told. Shota Izawa kicked several times in quick succession after punching his fists in the air. This was pretty much how his mornings were, especially on the weekends. He would repeatedly train in order to gain strength. He did have a quirk, of course, but that was only helpful against quirks, and even then it might not be enough to frighten them off. The teen heard the door slide while he was still training. Master Bang smiled as he entered the room with his arms behind his back. He said, "Good morning, Shota-kun." Izawa responded, dropping his arms, "Sensei." Then he gave him a respectful bow. "Morning. Hope you don't mind me training here." After glancing at him, Master Bang surveyed the room. This was only one of his dojo's numerous training rooms. However, Izawa frequently used the space for training. He would typically be outside or in a larger area where he could train. This room was large enough, of course, but Izawa had been drawn here for another reason. "Raise your head. I see no problem training here," Bang responded. The old man went on as Izawa followed instructions. "So, is there a problem?" "I don't know what you mean." Bang arched an eyebrow and asked, "Is that so?" However, he was able to see through Izawa's mask. If the teenager hadn't been thinking about something, he would have said no. "Well, if that's the case, then I best be going. Carry on." Then he turned away from him and stepped forward. Meanwhile, Izawa started to get a little nervous. He was in there for a reason. He was simply apprehensive. He blurted out, "It's about you." Bang stopped. "I see." With a sigh, Izawa lowered his shoulders. Now he was somewhat relieved. "Yes, it's why I came here. I haven't been able to sleep well at night. So I came here to train, and well." Bang turned back to him and said, "I understand. As always, you are looking after your little sister. Nothing wrong with that. Even my big brother was like that towards me back when we were around your age." Izawa grinned slightly and said, "I see." But when he thought of yesterday, it fell. He paused and clenched his fists in rage. Yu's bullying only seems to be persistent. I suspect even the teachers aren't bothered to punish the students anymore, and to be fair, he said, it's frustrating. She's just a human like the rest of us, and yet they would treat her like she's a monster. I was going to say an outsider, but, yeah. Bang sighed in disappointment, but that's what many of them see her as, unfortunately. Even my own students are afraid of her because of that one incident when she grew wings. Izawa let out a melancholy sigh. I remember, but it wasn't her fault. Don't they understand that? Bang answered, they don't, and that's the problem. Humans are fundamentally afraid of the unknown. If they don't understand it, naturally they'll want to oppose it. I see, so is there a way to get them to understand her? Not to the people who know about her. Ignorance, sometimes, is impossible to break through. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to get them to listen. But can you blame them at this point? What do you mean? Izawa stepped back in fear as his eyes grew wide. Don't tell me you agree with them. Of course not. What do you take me for? I may be getting old, but I can think for myself. Izawa brought his foot side by side once more and rubbed his arm awkwardly before saying, sorry. Apology accepted. So what did you mean, anyway? Alright. Bang put his arm down and stroked his hairless chin. Shota-kun, I know you hate society for what it has done to you and your sister. I won't blame you for feeling this way. But, have you ever tried to think about their own feelings? Their own feelings? Asked Izawa. He scoffed. Forgive me, master, but I can only think of their disgust towards us. I see. And there's the problem. You limit yourself to that thought. That, of course, is fine. However, carrying that mentally alone can be dangerous. I don't see how it can be dangerous. Bang shut the door after glancing over his shoulder. Then he faced Izawa once more. Tell me, do you know what it means to become a monster? I don't understand. How does that have to do with my sister? A lot. But, most importantly, it has much to do with you. With me. Bang nodded and confirmed, indeed. I've fought my fair share of monsters, and there is one thing I've noticed. Most of them were human beings who lost their way. Their hate for their previous life probably led them to become what they were. And it goes to show that even humans can be tainted if they're not careful. In response, Izawa said, I won't become a monster. I can never become such a thing. Oh, I know that. But here's where my question about the townspeople comes in. He responded, these former humans weren't born as monsters, and yet they became that way in the end. As humans, we cast immediate judgment amongst them. Why? Because we're human. I heard science has been investigating the nature behind it, however it doesn't seem like they truly understand a man's reason to become a monster. Oh, but they hurt and kill people, do they not? Yes, without a doubt. But if we truly try to understand these monsters, wouldn't it be better to learn so we can avoid future disasters? But humanity won't do that, at least not yet. Their judgment on these type of monsters have already been made up, just like how the townspeople have made their judgment on you and your sister. Izawa firmly asserted, but we're not monsters. We're human beings. He struggled with Master Bang. What did the elderly man want to say? I know that. My brother knows that. But these people don't know that, and because of this, a future disaster may occur. That is why I think you two should think about their feelings. If you do, only then will you understand your fellow man and become someone better than them. Izawa thought about what his master had said. He's always been the type of guy who gets advice from Bang. He admired the man for many reasons, including this one. It was the reason he hoped to become a teacher in the future. He said, I think I understand now. But even though I can understand their feelings, that won't change anything. To them, it won't change anything. But to you, it will change you drastically, because then you'll be able to do so many amazing things they could only dream of. I see. Thank you, Master. Before it fell, Bang grinned and said, you're welcome. But, there is no denying this other thing. I am partly to blame for your sister's treatment. I'm an old man who used to think he'll never have his own children, and so I dedicated my whole life to martial arts. But then the two of you arrived at my dojo's doorsteps, abandoned and in need of help. Master, mumbled Izawa. His master's words moved him on an emotional level. But I see now that I have a lot to learn, not just with martial arts, but as a father figure. I only ask you and you to forgive me. I forgive you, and I'm sure you does. Bang looked up at the ceiling to his near right and said, probably. How long are you going to listen in on us, you? A shriek and a loud clank were heard by both males. Yu abruptly dropped from the ceiling and hit the floor hard. Izawa was startled, but that was quickly dispelled when he rushed to his sister and assisted her in standing up. Izawa frantically asked, are you okay, sis? What were you doing up there? Yu muttered, too ashamed to speak, Bang raised a hand to reassure them, no, this is fine. Now that you two are here, I've been meaning to ask you two something. What is it? Inquired Izawa. Yu looked at him and asked the same inquisitive question. What do you say about moving to the city? The three of us, like a family. What? Exclaimed Yu and Izawa in surprise. One must be willing to climb the many steps that lead to Master Bang's dojo in order to reach it. Ultimately, the dojo was situated atop a mountain, and the steps served as the initial challenge for anyone new to training under Bang. However, there would not be a new student today. Instead, an enraged former pupil had made a comeback. Sitting at the very top of the step, absorbed in her own thoughts, Yu was not aware of it. It might be windy up at the top of a mountain. It happily pushed her hair, but luckily the adolescent girl was accustomed to it. Ever since she and her brother listened to the old man, Bang had been on her mind. However, it disturbed her, and she desired solitude to reflect. Izawa said, Yu, there you are. He approached his sister after spotting her from the dojo's grand entrance. Yu just glanced over her shoulder in response. She sighed and bowed her head as he took a seat beside her. Do you think Master Bang is serious about it? She inquired. He can't honestly leave his own livelihood behind, can he? According to Izawa, well, it's not like he's completely leaving it. He'll be with us for the most part, but someone will be in charge of the dojo. And he'll come visit here once in a while to train the students and see how things are going. She turned to face her brother and said, I know, but this is his life we're talking about. She was clearly worried. We don't have a right to take that away from him, especially not me. She could have gone on, but instead she turned to face the innumerable stairs below. Maybe, if only I haven't been such a freak. Perhaps he wouldn't want to do this. All I ever do is become a burden. Is that what you think you are? Yu's gaze expanded. She realized that she had expressed her innermost thoughts. That was never what she wanted to do. She now feared that the only member of her family would despise her. Izawa said, you're no burden. Not by a long shot. What? Yu inquired. He stared at him, confused. He was not, however, turning to face her. He was staring down at the stairs instead. He said, I think I get it now. For a long time, you felt like you were a burden, just like our parents felt. You probably thought that it would be better for me and Master Bang if you didn't exist. But, that's where you're wrong. At last, he smiled as he turned to face her. You've not be a burden, you're my little sister, so of course I'm going to be concerned about you. I love you no matter what. Master Bang feels the same. Why else do you think he accepted us into his dojo? Maybe, because he pities us. Izawa's sudden laughter startled his sister a little. Her glare was enough to get him to stop talking. Sorry, he cleared his throat and apologized. Listen, Master Bang would never feel that way towards us. You've seen how he trains some of his students. When some of them are unmotivated, he tries to get them back into place, not because of pity, but because he sees their potential. Izawa had not finished yet. He got to his feet and grinned. And he sees potential in us too. I know for a fact that he's an honorable man who won't pity anyone so easily, because that would give them a false sense of security. He's a true father and a true hero. When I grow up, I want to be just like him. Someday, I hope to have my own students who all inspire just like Master Bang. So awesome, you thought in amazement. Shodan is accurate. I aspire to be as motivated as he is. So how about it? Inquired Izawa. Yu jolted out of her reverie with a, huh. Izawa extended his arm toward her. Let's aim for a bright future together. Once we leave this village, we can start all over. You know, have a normal school life, make some friends, and become what we want to be. Yu glanced at his hand, then at his face. He was determined, and he was willing to take her with him, which amazed her. Without a doubt, she might have a better life if she accepted his hand. That would be wonderful for her. She then raised her hand in its direction, prepared to grasp it. Everything would change at this very moment. However, an unforeseen circumstance prevented her from making her decision. A massive figure landed on the ground behind them after flying directly overhead. The ground trembled under the weight of its enormous feet, forming a tiny dust cloud. Whoever it was, his hideous shape was visible. With a strong voice, he exclaimed, I'm back, Bang Sensei. It was a humanoid tiger, 15 feet tall. He had red eyes, blonde hair on its head, and the black and white uniform of the dojo. Tanaka has returned, stronger than ever. And now I shall claim this dojo as mine, he yelled. Tanaka, asked Izawa. That was the name he and you remembered. One of Bang's former pupils owned it. Tanaka turned to face them and said, oh, so it's the vampire duo. I wasn't expecting to see the both of you yet. Has the old man finally kicked you out? Yu put her arms to her chest and whimpered. After observing her response, Izawa stood in front of her and gave her a resolute look. Listen, Yu, I'm going to create a path for you. Warn Master Bang. I'll hold him off until then, he stated. She questioned, are you sure? What if you get hurt? She even questioned her own skills because she was afraid for him. I'll be fine. Just run as fast as you can. I believe in you, he replied. Yu nodded while gazing at her brother's back. She knew how he felt, even though she couldn't see his face. So she got up and prepared to run into the dojo. The staircase was a contributing factor in Izawa's decision to not tell her to flee. She could die or suffer severe injuries from one major error. Oh, Tanaka asked with amusement. He gave them a full face and grinned sickeningly. I see you have Bang's short-sightedness. Good, I'll make quick work of you. That's Master Bang to you, Izawa exclaimed with pride. He assumed a position that Tanaka and you were both accustomed to. It was the flowing water rock-crushing fists martial arts stance. HMPH. I don't need to try such a weak move. With my strength alone, I can kill 100 Bangs. I doubt that. There was no more waiting for the teenager. The monster laughed and slammed his massive fist down on him as he charged directly at him. But before it could hit him, Izawa leapt forward, and he missed. He prepared his fists for the necessary blows, bringing them close to the monster's face. Tanaka was unable to respond, so the monster was repeatedly struck in the face with quick punches. They all connected with the intent to cause harm. As a result, Tanaka was forced several meters back. Izawa landed on his feet at the same moment and turned to face his sister urgently. He yelled, "Now's your chance. Go, now." Yu nodded and said, "Hi." She dashed to the front door as quickly as she could, but it wasn't missed. Tanaka snarled and held up his enormous hand at her as his gaze shifted to her. "Like hell I'll let her do that." "You!" exclaimed Izawa. The adolescent girl stopped and grew frightened. Tanaka swung so quickly that there was no time to escape. However, Izawa outran her by pushing her aside, demonstrating his superior speed. Unfortunately, that meant the monster himself struck him. Yu hit the ground and heard her brother scream and then a loud smack. She screamed when she saw his body flying over her. "Oni-chan." Tanaka swung him straight off the mountaintop with a hard throw. As he fell to the woods below, Izawa let out a scream. Yu got to her feet and ran toward him. When she reached the hill's edge, she leapt off and extended her hand to her brother. She yelled, "Grab on." Izawa cried, "What are you doing?" "Trust me," she exclaimed. He trusted her, even though Izawa had no idea what she had planned. With a solemn nod, he took her outstretched hand. Luckily, she turned out to be trustworthy. Two sets of wings that resembled mosquitoes emerged from Yu's back. They flapped quickly through the air, larger than her body. That allowed her to groan as she flew up with her brother, pulling him with both hands. She cried, "Hang on. I got you." "Up, you," mumbled Izawa. It made sense that he was flabbergasted. Yu hadn't used those wings since she went on a blood hunt and lost control of her senses. Fortunately, nobody had been gravely injured at the time. When Tanaka saw them both, he laughed. "I forgot you could do that. But it doesn't matter, I'll just shoot you both down with my deadly quirk." With a sneer, Izawa triggered his quirk. It occurred simultaneously with Tanaka's mouth opening. However, Izawa's nullification quirk caught him and prevented the attack from ever happening. "Bastard!" snarled Tanaka in utter rage. Every hair on his body stood up, and his eyes turned completely blood red. "I'm not so weak. I'll kill you for tampering with my quirk." "You, drop me," yelled Izawa. "I can't do that," she shot back. "You'll get hurt." "There's no time. Just do it." "No, I." It was too late. Tanaka leapt at them and caught up to them with great force. Yu tried to take off, but he was too fast. He only needed to seize Izawa's leg before swinging them into the forest. Yu and her brother were flung through multiple branches before they hit the ground because she was unable to regain control. Yu moaned, "Ow." With a severe headache and minor bruises, she lay on the dirt. Her head felt hazy at first, but it cleared up almost instantly. However, Izawa was not feeling well. He was imprisoned with a mild mixture beneath two long tree branches. "Oni-chan," Yu cursed. "Oni-chan, move." I'm sorry." "You," moaned Izawa. When Tanaka landed in the same vicinity as them, their situation abruptly deteriorated. Before his sickening smile appeared as he gazed at the split siblings, the ground trembled from the amazing landing. He said, "Perfect," and moved in Izawa's direction. Yu shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" Tanaka pushed his big foot against the branches, ignoring her. Izawa's condition worsened when he let out a cry of pain. He kept putting more pressure on him, and the monster just laughed. "Ha ha ha, do you feel it now, boy? Bang always gave you praises. Now he isn't here to save you. How do you like it now? You're weak, weak." Yu screamed, "Stop it. Leave him alone." She gave Tanaka a dagger-like glare while her eyes swelled with tears. Tanaka gave her a look and said, "Huh. Oh, I almost forgot about you." Yu pushed her arms and legs to the floor while gritting her teeth. She had to rise and support her vanquished big brother. They would both be dead if she didn't. Not so fast. She was barely upright when Tanaka stopped her. In an instant, he was in front of her, and then he kicked her in the stomach with great force. Before being slammed into a tree trunk, Yu spat out blood from the impact. She also lost oxygen as a result of the kick, particularly when she collapsed to her knees. Tanaka exclaimed, Now, I can't have a bug ruining my fun, now can I?" With delight. He was about to head back toward Izawa when he was stopped in his tracks by a strange feeling. She didn't know what it was, but she saw a weaker Yu. Tanaka simply moaned in agony before turning to face her again, feeling both irritated and relieved. He said, "That man, damn him, he let out a sigh, shook his head, and took you in his right palm. Change of plans. You're coming with me. Hey, moaned Izawa. Even with the branches on top of him, he continued despite the excruciating pain in his back. What are you doing with my sister? Let her go. Tanaka said. Then come to town and stop me. I've come to realize that this will be the best revenge on Bang. What are you talking about? What are you going to do to you? Public execution, he said, grinning sickeningly. Everyone in town hates her because she's a pest. So in a way, I'll be a hero to them. No, Izawa exclaimed, her eyes wide. He pushed as hard as he could, angry and afraid for his younger sister. However, the endeavor was unsuccessful. He couldn't free himself from the branches because his body was too damaged. But he continued, his eyes reddening, his quirk coming into play. You leave her alone. Put her down right now. Tanaka laughed. Fool, you can't nullify the natural abilities of a monster. After that, he bowed his knees and jumped into the air, landing far away and then doing it again and again. You, exclaimed Izawa, hold on, I'll save you. Oni-chan, mumbled you. She was also afraid, but there was nothing she could do. The only thing she could control was her facial expression, the rest of her body hurt from the earlier kick. Thus, she was in Tanaka's grasp as he repeatedly leapt and landed on the ground on his way to the village. A worse fate was undoubtedly in store for her. However, she was powerless to change it. Her thoughts turned to the villagers and their potential reactions. You said feebly, your plan won't work. Huh. The people, they'll run away the moment they see you. No one would want to see me die in your hands. You firmly believed it. Tanaka was a monstrous humanoid creature with a face that would make any person shudder. Nobody was going to want to stay with him around. Is that what you think? Huh. Tanaka landed just outside the woods on the sidewalks. In front of them was a road that led to the actual village. The monster smiled at you as he raised her to his face. You haven't stuck around the people long enough, have you? He inquired. I have seen the looks in their eyes, and I have heard the discussions about you. People are afraid of you, they resent you. And now they will finally be relieved of those feelings once you die. Her wide eyes were fixed on him, and Yu was unable to speak. Was he telling the truth, perhaps? Was he telling lies to frighten her? She whispered, I don't believe you. Then you will learn soon enough. He then leapt into the air once more. The busiest area of the village was the center, where he landed this time. Numerous people were already outside, either on the sidewalk or in their various forms of transportation. Tanaka's presence did, in fact, stir up controversy. As people on the sidewalk stopped when they felt the ground tremble, cars collided with one another. Tanaka, who was grinning broadly, was the center of attention. Monster! Exclaimed one woman. Everyone hurried out in their different forms of transportation, prepared to escape. The same applied to those who were already standing. However, Tanaka stopped them when he raised Yu's body as if she were a trophy. Tanaka yelled, Look, I have captured the true monster. They listened to what he had to say. As a result, even though many of them were terrified, they all stopped completely when they looked back at him and saw Yu. Curiosity took over, and fear gradually started to fade away. They were more interested because the monster wasn't acting so aggressively toward them. He paused and gave Yu a rag doll-like jerk. I was once human like you all until this, he said. Monster did this to me. Then Yu groaned. Huh. What? Her physical and mental health were suffering as a result of being forced to wear a restraint. The crowd was staring at her in horror, shock, and fear when she heard whispers below. Is it true? Can she really do that now? First she sucks the blood of innocent children, and now she can turn people into monsters. She really is a vampire. When Yu heard these words, she gasped. She made an unsuccessful attempt to break free from Tanaka. The grip of the monster was amazing. It's not true, she cried, her voice more like a supplication. I didn't turn him into an AARRGH. When he tightened his hold on her, hurting her, Tanaka stopped her. He brought her close to his face and yelled directly at her while wearing a frown and a mask of deceit. When Tanaka's harsh breath hit her face, she exclaimed, You dare call me a liar? I was a student of the great master Bang until you turned him into your mindless slave. To Yu's own dismay, the crowd gasped. Bang was a well-liked person in the community who was renowned for his kindness, bravery, and leadership. The townspeople viewed his dojo as a sign of discipline. It therefore struck a deep chord to learn that Yu had made him a slave. As more people began to believe Tanaka's words, murmurs began to spread throughout the crowd. He appeared to have kept his humanity while wearing the dojo's uniform. Given that Bang instructs his students in mental control, some members of the audience even conjectured about it. Tanaka received the responses he desired. These individuals were already persuaded by Yu's monster-like inclination. They referred to her as the real monster and described how frightening her very presence has been to the villagers, which caused Yu to feel pain as she heard each of their agonizing words. Yu thought desperately, but he's lying. She shook her head, attempting to ignore their stern remarks, tears welling up in her eyes. Don't believe him, please. But is it true? A young man inquired. He was the only one with the courage to approach Tanaka and speak up. Did she really do this to you? Yes. Tanaka bowed his head and scowled. This was all a charade, of course. She would have taken over my mind, if it weren't for Master Bang's mental teaching. Sadly, I cannot say the same for him. But he's lying, let Yu exclaim. She was now looking at the people in desperation, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please believe me, Master Bang is like a father to me. I would never do anything to hurt him. But you would hurt our kids, wouldn't you? The same man said, glaring at her with rage. I saw what you did. Let's not forget about what you did to Bang's own students. One of them you attacked was my son. He was scared shitless thanks to you. But, you paused and lowered her expression. She couldn't protect herself, not in this condition. No matter how hard she tried, her words would not reach them. A teenage girl said, isn't it better to get rid of her then? Yu gasped and turned to face the culprit. It was a girl from her school with brown hair. She was one of her bullies as well. Every day with her in school feels like a battle because she can go crazy and kill us anytime. You guys should have seen how she almost jumped my friend when she scrapped her knee one time. Absurd. Tanaka glared at Yu, growling. Does your evil hold no ground? I should kill you right here and now. Perhaps Master Bang would be free, and this town can finally know peace. Do it, said an old man from the sidewalks this time. Get rid of the bitch. The heroes in this town refuse to do anything about it because she looks like a child. When Yu heard it, her heart fell. However, when the audience supported him by yelling, kill her, kill her, kill her, her predicament deteriorated. Yu whimpered. No, she was aware that she was despised by the populace, but never to this extent. But now she could see it clearly. Tanaka was correct. They genuinely want her dead. Talking of the monster, he said gravely. Then it shall be. Wait, don't do it, a single voice exclaimed. Before a single footstep could be heard hurrying to the scene, the chant abruptly stopped. One young man with black hair, square-framed glasses, and a lab coat caught everyone's attention. Before he could face Tanaka and draw everyone's attention, his face was soaked with perspiration. With his hands on his ankle, he gasped, hold on. Tanaka arched an eyebrow, then let it drop. Who are you, and how dare you interrupt the execution? He swallowed some air and panted. Then he straightened up and sighed. My name is Dr. Genos. I'm the lab teacher from that girl's school. You mean this Mo? She's not a monster, insisted Dr. Genos. He threw his arms aside and turned to face everyone in an angry manner. What's wrong with you people? Don't you see what you're doing? You're trying to kill an innocent girl. Another young woman yelled, she's not innocent. That girl almost attacked my kid a year ago. Mine too. Yes, she almost got me, exclaimed another person, misplaced in the irate mob. Shut up, shouted Dr. Genos angrily. The crowd appeared to have offended and frustrated him. How sure are you? For all I know, there has only been 3 reported cases about it, and one of them happened in Master Bang's dojo. Those 2 other cases were mild, and she humbly apologized. But you. He stopped to catch his breath. You people are just scared of her because of her quirk. Because her quirk isn't as shiny and cool as those heroes, you decide to live in fear. You don't know her, and that's what scares you. If there's anyone who's a monster, it's all of you. Everyone seemed surprised by Dr. Genos' speech, and there was a noticeable silence that followed. Some of them actually stopped to consider what he had said. In particular, Yu was glad to hear him speak. In this dire situation, it gave her a glimmer of hope. Hopefully, these individuals will now realize their mistake. Tanaka said, then what about me? Dr. Genos turned to him and asked, what? Tanaka's footsteps created cracks in the ground as he stomped. I'm a monster because of her. Am I just scared because I don't really know her? One of the young men in the crowd said, hey, he's right. That was more than enough to discredit what Dr. Genos had said. One man said, that girl is a monster. Among the women, one exclaimed, someone should do something before she turns us into monsters. The previous chant quickly became louder and more angry. Dr. Genos's face was filled with despair as he gazed up at Yu. He was powerless to do anything. That was evident to Yu, who turned away from everyone with sadness. Then it is settled, exclaimed Tanaka. This monster will die here. All of a sudden, the audience erupted in cheers. As Yu heard it all, her heart sank even deeper. Dr. Genos was the only one not expressing disapproval. They were actually going to kill her. Why are you people acting in this manner? I just wanted to be normal. I never wanted to be like this. Typical. Why am I unable to be normal? Oh look, exclaimed a teenage boy. She's crying. He was a classmate of hers who harbored deep animosity toward her. Everyone burst out laughing. They didn't falter in the least because of her tear-soaked cheeks. They merely pointed at her while laughing. As his free hand closed in on her head, Tanaka even joined in. They're actually laughing. Yu's eyes widened as she thought this. How could they have been so cruel? As she glared down at them, Yu's perception of them abruptly changed. To her, these individuals were monsters, not human, and they would go to great lengths to have her brutally murdered. That in and of itself was enough to make her lose her temper. I'm going to kill you all. I'll kill you all. Kill, kill, kill. Her face was now possessed by a deep frown. She only had her head free, so she bit down on Tanaka's hand and opened her mouth to show her fangs. Ha ha ha, is that supposed to hurt? Kill, she snarled, her voice rasping. She then drank the blood of the monster. She underwent a quick change before anyone could tell. She was overcome by a surge of black and white electric energy that became so tense that it destroyed Tanaka's hand. Ah, the monster exclaimed. As more blood spurted out into the open, he took a step back and grasped his severed arm. The sudden transformation caught everyone off guard, and they all watched in amazement. They did so because they were shocked and confused. Yu's metamorphosis came to an end when the light went out. Yu's body was primarily made up of black and white exoskeleton, no clothing. Her long black hair had turned white, and she now looked like a cross between a human and a mosquito. Her lower legs were digitigrade with extra forelegs, and her limbs were now extended and ended in 2 hooks. Her shins and biceps, meanwhile, were striped like a hornet's and covered in long bristles. Other parts of her body revealed more of her mosquito features. She had 2 sets of antennae, a shortened proboscis, and a second pair of compound eyes, but her face remained the same, now chalky white. Then, even though she still has a human abdomen, the small portion of her back has a mosquito-like appearance. She had steam escaping from her body. She had a great deal of power, and that power was accompanied by some repressed aggression. Because Tanaka was the source of that aggression, she roared monstrously and lunged at him as she glared at him with red eyes of rage. She stabbed Tanaka in the eyes with her claw-like bristles, instantly blinding him as the blood covered his eyes. As a result, he let out a cry of excruciating pain and was lifted several meters off the ground. Yu was on his face as she displayed her body weapons, and he fell hard onto his back. Those who witnessed what should have been an execution were instantly frightened. They immediately started fleeing because they didn't want to experience what Tanaka was. He begged, Don't kill me. Because he didn't want to die. His animalistic senses allowed him to detect her intent to kill, which he dreaded greatly. I was just following. More pain kept him from speaking. Yu became furious and quickly began slicing his face with her claw-like bristles. Tanaka nevertheless made an effort to argue his case, but only if he could get away. I was following orders. Yu cut his whole head in 2, and that was the end of it. She didn't care that his blood now covered the front of her body. She licked the blood on her lips, if anything, and then let a sickening smile appear on her face. More, she snarled, laughing uncontrollably away. I want more blood. This power is incredible. I've never felt anything like this. Then she flew into the air, remembering the people. In her opinion, humans didn't exist and she shouldn't give a damn about them. She had the right to devour them because, to her, they resembled cattle. She yelled and roared, let's have a massacre party. I'm the host and the celebrant. Thanks for the food. The old Yu was no longer there. Her desire for blood and power had blinded her. Not wanting to rush it, she looked for her first victim. She thinks she will eventually get all of them. She discovered the old man from earlier to be her first victim. The man who orally approved her execution was the same one. She declared, him. He dies first. She then took action by lunging directly at him. Her eyes were fixed on him as he ran as fast as his aging body would allow, and her claw-like bristles sharpened. He was obviously a target because he was slower than everyone else. Die! Exclaimed Yu. The elderly man turned around in horror. With a gasp, he lifted his arm to protect himself. Of course, it was in vain. In an instant, Yu's claw-like bristles would sever it in his head. That's exactly what she planned to do. Just as she was about to slit him in two with her body weapons, a familiar image appeared in front of her. The old man was replaced by Master Bang, who was grinning warmly. What do you say about moving to another city? The three of us, like a family. Yu's blood-stained eyes reverted to their natural human black hue as her eyes widened. Her voice was a whisper, Master Bang. Then her reality hit her like a ton of bricks and she felt sick. Even though she detested them, she never imagined that she would want to murder them. She stopped her blood hunt after coming to that realization, but it wasn't enough to prevent her from diving at the man. However, she was stopped by someone who kicked her in the face. She was knocked off course as a result, and just as she was about to fall to the ground, the same person struck her with swift, forceful blows. Each blow caused numerous bruises and went straight through her tough skin. Finally, she was knocked to the ground after being punched in the face. She winced and opened her eyes slowly to see her attacker, battered and extremely weak. She gasped as her eyes grew wide. Oh, Oni-chan. Izawa Shota, her brother, was standing with his fists clenched, just as she had seen. There was a look on his face, but his bruises were still there. It was a disgusted expression. Why, she thought. She was knocked unconscious when Izawa kicked her in the face. Back in the here and now. With a loud cry, Mosquito Girl exclaimed, "What the hellll?" The heroes in front of her were shocked by her outburst. She was accompanied only by Death Gatling, Glasses, Lightning Max, and two other professional heroes, Killshot and Shooter. A minute before Mosquito Girl awoke from a brief silence, the pro hero Wings, also known as Hawks, had left the area. Glasses exclaimed, she's awake. Stating the obvious. Mosquito Girl snarled like an enraged caged beast, in a bloody frenzy. She tossed her head up, down, left, and right, her eyes blood red. The fact that Hawk's feathers were impaled in her body was causing her to lose blood, but she no longer gave a damn. The only thing holding her back were Hawk's feathers, but that wouldn't last long. She tried to force her body out of the feathers while still in her rage, letting out a loud animalistic cry. The heroes were startled. Death Gatling said, "We can't let her escape." With a cross-shaped scar on his face, long untidy hair, and a Gatling gun in his left hand, the man was ready to shoot her. However, a blonde hero who resembled Robin Hood, Shooter, beat him to it with his bow and two arrows aimed at the monster. After saying, "I'll take the shot," he shot her. Watch. My quirk, Multiply, increases the number of any object in my possession. His arrows did exactly what he said they would. The number of arrows had increased from 2 to 6. They all carried poison potent enough to defeat a monster of wolf level. It would definitely kill Mosquito Girl. But it wasn't her who perished. Instead, a well-known young boy blocked the path. Both Mosquito Girl and the heroes experienced it so quickly that they hardly had time to react before the arrows pierced the child's stomach and chest. "Kid," Mosquito Girl yelled. Her eyes widened as she recognized the child, and her bloody rage abruptly stopped. The heroes were shocked, and Shooter in particular retreated in disbelief. The hero, who resembled Robin Hood, was taken aback by what had just transpired. He has never before hurt an innocent person. But now he had, and as he lost his balance and fell on his butt, reality hit him hard. While the heroes were recuperating psychologically, Mosquito Girl had her opportunity. She tore herself from Hawk's feathers and fell hard to the ground, even though it hurt a lot. Having left both legs hooked on the tree, she was a bloody mess. She also suffered severe injuries to her stomach and arms at the same time. But she didn't care about any of them. She fought against her own frailties and crawled in the direction of the hurt child. She exclaimed, What the hell is wrong with you? Death Gatling, hey, stay away from him." The first person to notice her action was him. "Don't," exclaimed Glasses. Arms out, he blocked Death Gatling's path. "The kid's in the way. You'll kill him." "He's already dead," interrupted Death Gatling. He said that with a hint of pain in his voice. He wished it were different, but he knew he was correct. So he knocked glasses away with his Gatling gun. Right now, that monster could kill a million kids like him if we allow her. Think about them. He and the others will probably be criticized and perhaps even sued for getting a child killed. However, Death Gatling considered himself a realist. He might be able to save face and save many lives as long as he defeated Mosquito Girl. When Mosquito Girl saw his actions, she became enraged. But because the child was her top priority right now, she was able to control her anger. Cradling the child to her body with her left hand, she pushed her injured arms to rest on what was left of her legs. To divert Death Gatling and the other heroes, she then thrust her right arm forward and called forth a tiny swarm of mosquitoes. Shit, she swore while wearing a distressed expression. Her wings were too damaged for her to take the child with her, but the heroes were now preoccupied. She heard the child's voice at that moment. The child moaned as he took her free hand and said, "Run, you have to live." Mosquito Girl yelled, "Are you stupid? What about you? First off, why did you save me? Did you have some kind of a death wish?" The child coughed and grinned a little. Before he started to wheeze heavily, blood spat out. "Ma, maybe, but I wanted to repay you for everything. No one has ever been so nice to me like you have." Nice. In her mind, Mosquito Girl asked, "When did I treat this kid nicely? Was that when I talked to him?" She frowned as her demeanor softened. In fact, she was sympathetic to him. His life was just as awful as mine was. Only Bang has shown me such kindness. Shota hasn't, at least not after what he did to me. The child coughed up blood once more. He was dying quickly from the poison. He would have passed away by now if it weren't for his peculiarity of taking other people's lives and adding them to his own. "Kato," exclaimed Mosquito Girl. With a feeble smile, Kato said, You remember my name?" Of course, I do," exclaimed Mosquito Girl. She started crying as tears welled up in her eyes for the first time in a long time. Idiot, what the hell is wrong with you? Humans are supposed to hate monsters. You're just a stupid kid, Kato." And yet, she was unable to bring herself to complete her sentence. She struggled with her own emotions. She hasn't shown concern for another human being in a very long time. She therefore found it hard to admit that she was honest with herself. As he lifted his stumbling arm and touched her left cheek, Kato appeared to comprehend. "I saved a human, not a monster, a human." "A human." His words startled her, and her eyes widened. Kato smiled weakly and nodded. "Yeah." Then a flashback to Mosquito Girl occurred. Years had passed since Bang had first explained emotions and monsters to her in Izawa. But if we truly tried to understand these monsters, wouldn't it be better to learn so we can avoid future disasters? That is why I think you too should think about their feelings. If you do, only then will you understand your fellow man and become someone better than them. You started crying more as these memories came flooding back to her. She was finally releasing the pain, rage, and hatred she had suppressed for so long. Kato said, to get her attention. "You. What?" inquired Kato. When she stopped crying, she said, "My name is Izawa Yu." Her real name was mentioned for the first time in years. "Remember it, okay?" "You," he whimpered once more. "That's a cute name." Mosquito Girl wiped away her own tears and said, "Yeah," she said with a smile. "You should rest now, leave the rest to me." He flashed his teeth and grinned, "I guess so, thank you, you." With a nod, Mosquito Girl turned back to face the preoccupied heroes. They would definitely kill her soon if she didn't power up. With an idea in mind, she touched his shirt that was covered in blood. "You don't mind if I?" Kato laughed and smiled weakly. He said, "Take as much as you need. Just promise me, you'll survive, not just for me but for yourself." His eyes turned lifeless, and his life came to an end. That smile on his face persisted as his head shifted sideways. Yu scowled because he knew he was dead at that precise moment. She had to grant his final wish because there was nothing else she could do. In order to suck on his blood, she pulled his neck to her mouth. She muttered in his ear, "You're quite the pushover, kid. Thank you for everything." "No," exclaimed Death Gatling. Now that the mosquitoes had dispersed, the hero's attention was solely on Mosquito Girl. Being aware of her peculiarity, he promptly aimed his Gatling gun at her. "I won't allow you to deface a child's body anymore. Death is the only thing that awaits you. Death shower. After he discharged every bullet he had, none of the heroes could stop him. Glasses, Lightning Max, and the others let out a gasp as Mosquito Girl was hit by a barrage of bullets. In response, she moved Kato's body out of the line of fire so that it wouldn't become a puddle of blood. She, on the other hand, screamed in agony as she took every bullet. She would have succumbed to the injections if it weren't for her renewed resolve. So she took the necessary action. She sank her teeth into Kato's neck and drank some of his blood in an attempt to fight back and grant Kato's final wish. After she was done with them, the majority of her victims were hardly the same. Not Kato, though. To keep him from looking like a skeleton, she only took a tiny sip of it. She was too much in awe of him to do such a terrible thing. Her entire body was suddenly overcome by a familiar feeling. When she drank Tanaka's blood all those years ago, she recalled feeling the same rush of adrenaline. And even though she had consumed a lot of blood from humans, animals, and monsters since then, she had never experienced this feeling before. A red aura enveloped her body, and strange lightning erupted from it. The energy from Mosquito Girl quickly evolved Death Gatling, so her bullets were useless. As a result, a massive wave of energy shook the ground and spread throughout the woods. The power knocked the heroes down. A cloud of dust engulfed the whole area as they stumbled back to their feet. "What was that?" inquired Lightning Max. Death Gatling gave the order, "Be on your guard. Something bad is coming." Uncertain of what lay ahead, Shooter nodded. The moment Mosquito Girl's silhouette appeared, all eyes were on her. When she stood up again with her reformed feet, it was clear that the monster had moved. Then, without the heroes noticing, a powerful wind blew away the dust cloud with a stroke of her arms. They could now see what was in front of them. However, it was short-lived due to the subsequent events. Suddenly, Mosquito Girl appeared behind them, her hands now sharp with spines. The heroes turned back to her when all of them let out a startled cry of agony. Each and almost all of them erupted in blood. Glasses was the only one not hurt, and he shuddered when he saw his fellows collapse to the ground, severely injured. What sort of power is this? As he gazed at Mosquito Girl with unsteady eyes, he thought. Can I battle her alone? Even our fastest member, Lightning Max, was defeated in a matter of seconds. Hey, you, Mosquito Girl called. Glasses stood defensively and trembled. He was afraid, but he had no intention of giving up. He was prepared to fight to the very end if necessary. He had, after all, been inspired to become that kind of hero by the One Punch Man himself. Mosquito Girl asked, "What do you think you're doing?" She should have raised one of her eyebrows by now if she had any. "Get the kid out of here. That's the only reason I left you alive." What? Glasses asked, turning around. Kato had passed away. He was perplexed, but he knew that much. He's dead, but, you want to save him? Mosquito Girl asked rhetorically, surprised. Then she thought of something. Before she could turn her gaze from the bodies on the ground, sadness took over. For as long as I can remember, I've always done what I've been told to do. Shota, Dr. Genos, psychos. None of these people never really cared about me, and yet, I worked so hard to please them. Glasses was surprised. He has previously seen and battled a few monsters. However, none of them displayed such melancholy. Mosquito Girl caught him off guard. He questioned, "Are you, really a monster? Maybe I am, or maybe I'm not. I don't understand." With a menacing glare, she pointed at him and said, "Enough. I left you alive because I felt like it. Now, get the kid's corpse out of here. I have a bird's wings to clip." A bird's wings. It was only then that her words made sense. A humanoid shadow with two wings fell upon them in the moonlight. Hawks was back, and he didn't appear pleased. Glasses knew what he needed to do. He hurried to the child's body and then turned to face his injured teammates. To get them out, he will need some additional assistance. I hope they won't be killed in the impending battle. After cradling Kato's body in his arms, he turned to face Mosquito Girl. They both made eye contact and stared at one another. He muttered, good luck, I guess," and turned away. Conflicted by what he had just said, he fled. The Mosquito Girl was a little curious. A hero wishing a monster good luck. The world must be going crazy now. She was giggling. She stopped and glanced up at Hawks, who was glaring at her, before saying, "Maybe I'll pay him a visit someday. But first, how long are you going to stay up there?" Hawks said it was pathetic. "I give them an easy task, and they failed. And now a kid died because of them. The mosquito girl said, "First, take care of yourself, hero. Just like your wings, I'm about to cut down your ego and pride." Hawks laughed and sneered, quite cocky. "But that's to expect from a monster. You're all the same, despite whatever transformations or disaster level your kind goes through." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong." "What?" With a proud smile, Mosquito declared, "I'm no longer like the rest. Before now, I assumed my personality was just because I was a monster, when in reality it hasn't been the case." "Really?" "Yes, so I were to guess, this feelings of regret, anger, and hatred I held were just human emotions. Then you're saying you're not a monster?" "Yes, and no." Hawks said, "You're not making a lot of sense." "Am I though?" laughed Mosquito Girl. "Let me ask you something. What makes a monster truly a monster? Is it the look or their actions? Or perhaps, it's society's definition of a monster?" Hawks remained silent because she sounded rhetorical, not because he didn't have a response of his own. "Thanks to the kid, I've come to realize something about myself and others. I'm not a monster, but at the same time I am a monster." "You're obviously lost. You do realize you just contradicted yourself." "No, I haven't," she clarified after saying that. "My body is like this as a result of my quirk, not just from my own twisted feelings like most monsters. I have retained my humanity all this time. And yet, you people designated me as a monster. Now do you understand?" Hawk's expression slightly changed. It was evidence that he did, in fact, comprehend her. The hero boldly said, "In other words, you're just a villain I have to take down." "I wouldn't call myself just a villain, though." "What do you mean?" She chuckled and let a menacing smile appear on her face. "What I'm about to do here will cement me as a special kind of monster. Remember that well, pro-hero." The body of Mosquito Girl has changed significantly. Her exoskeleton was now light red and bloody red, and she was slightly taller than before. Her banded stripes were sharper and more noticeable, and her hair had turned purple from white. Meanwhile, her bristles and mosquito headpiece had turned into jagged spines. "I hope you're watching, Kato, if there is a heaven." She grinned to herself. "I will live to the end, whatever that end may be, even though I'm not sure if I can keep your promise." Hero and monster were about to square off again. Hawks, the fourth-ranked pro-hero, had previously dealt with her. However, Mosquito Girl's personality and power were very different from those of that era. The battle's outcome may differ from the initial one. Monster name: Girl Mosquito. Dragon disaster level. Chirenko's expression was one of intense concern as he watched. Behind him, on the hospital bed, Master Bang was still in a coma, but he wasn't thinking about that right now. In front of him, a flat-screen TV was broadcasting live coverage of the fight between Mosquito Girl and Hawks, the fourth-ranked pro-hero. The conflict had shifted from the park into the surrounding neighborhoods, making Coruscant City the battleground. Loudspeakers positioned throughout the city sounded the emergency alarms, and a voiceover told everyone to head to the closest government shelters, forcing residents to leave. The official designation for Mosquito Girl's threat level was Dragon level. This deeply disturbed Chirenko. Since Master Bang had told him about the monster, it was a difficult pill for him to swallow. By Bang's description, it was becoming hard to believe that such a dangerous woman could be so innocent and sweet. There were 3 types of threat level dragons. There were 3 levels: low, middle, and high. These categories also applied to the majority of monsters, including those with lower threat levels. But because some monsters were so enigmatic, they were hardly ever mentioned in public. It even went further. Threat level wolf. Any significant danger to a community. Threat level tiger. Any threat posed by a monster to the city. Any monster that poses a threat to a state or province is a threat level demon. Dragon threat level. Any terrifying danger to a nation or nations. Whether Mosquito Girl was a low, middle, or high dragon level was unknown. She was still regarded as dangerous, though, particularly because she was making fun of the world's fastest hero. They were too fast for the camera to follow. The live coverage only showed loud booms and blurs to the audience. Because of the time of night, it was occasionally difficult to follow even the blurs. He whispered, Master would be so disheartened if he saw this. Chirenko. The blonde's eyes widened and his body trembled. For an instant, he believed he was hearing things, and his heart sank. In fact, that voice sounded just like Bang's. The voice called again, weakly, Chirenko. Without wasting any time, he turned around and gasped in surprise and delight. Bang was already seated and wearing a weary expression. He laid them at his disciple and rubbed his eyes with his fingers. Chirenko exclaimed, "Master, Master Bang," with delight. Bang was surprised when his disciple gave him a quick embrace. Chirenko drew away from him, blushing in shame as if he had noticed it himself. I'm sorry about that." Bang gazed at him, and then his eyes widened. Though it was only a fleeting memory, he recalled something crucial. The heart monitor beeped loudly as he pushed himself to sit on the edge of the bed, forcing him to take off the sticky pads from his chest. "I must have been asleep for quite a long time. You can fill me in on the way," Bang replied. "First, get me some clothes." "All right," nodded Chirenko. He went to a closet and took out the clothes that Bang usually wore. He gave it to the old master, who immediately took off his hospital gown in exchange. The disciple shook his head and turned away, his cheeks flushed. Master, I don't mean to be rude, but you just woke up from a coma. Where do you have to go in such a hurry?" he inquired. Bang stopped and glanced at the TV screen. The camera lingered on Mosquito Girl for a moment. Before it became normal, the old master's eyes widened, and he approached it. "Is that you?" Chirenko felt a little sad. "Yes. Where's Shota?" "I don't know." "Then who is she fighting?" "Hawks, the pro hero." Bang stopped and took a few steps. "Then I'm not too late. We must hurry, Chirenko. Contact my older brother, and tell him to bring a jet. We're going to Coruscant City." "Coruscant City? That's the center of the battle. How did you go, Chirenko? We're wasting valuable time." "Yes, Master." After that, Chirenko ran out of the hospital, making a little commotion in the hallway while he looked for a phone. Bang returned his gaze to the screen. As he watched the live news coverage, a worried expression appeared on his face. While reporting much of the fight from a helicopter, the newsman referred to you as a monster. He pondered, "You, what have you done these past years?" And, he hesitated, recalling something. An adolescent girl with emerald eyes behind purple-framed glasses, aqua-blue wavy hair, and white skin. He wondered, just who was that girl in my dreams? In the nightly hours, two blurs, both exceedingly fast, blazed across the city. The ground should tremble wherever and whenever they collided, and then there should be an explosion every time. Since there was no obvious winner in this race of speed, the battle was turning out to be fierce. After a while, both fighters did stop, but they immediately began swinging at one another. Hawk's feather-like blades and Mosquito Girl's two blade-wielding hands, each with two blades, clashed innumerable times. Each hit sent a powerful breeze and shockwave that sliced everything in all directions, but neither of them was able to gain the upper hand. This included buildings, streetlights, and parked cars. Hawks needed to think more quickly. He leapt back just in time to dodge Mosquito Girl's unexpected stomp kick. Rubble flew everywhere as the impact tore apart that portion of the road. "She's definitely gotten faster," Hawks thought, grinning slightly. "My speed has never been matched by anyone before. This might be more funny than I initially believed. But I have to get this done quickly. I am unable to indulge further." Then, he soared straight up and swung several of his short red wings in her direction. Mosquito Girl managed to avoid them all, but it wasn't that simple. In the hopes that their trajectory would weaken, they followed her as she flew farther away from Hawks. No, they didn't. Even as she swerved through and around buildings, they appeared to be catching up to her, if anything. "For you, that's a top pro hero. They're a pain in the ass," she thought. She glanced back to see where they were at that moment. A few of the feathers had departed from their group and were on their way. Mosquito Girl merely rolled her eyes, knowing better. She didn't realize Hawk's actual plan until she came to an intersection. The feathers came directly at her from two sides, severing any chance of escape. Knowing better, however, Mosquito Girl launched herself into the air with such force that she emitted a loud boom that forced all of the feathers to the ground. She came at Hawks like a comet, whipping herself back at him. "Surprise, motherfucker," Mosquito Girl screamed, laughing and crackling. Hawks leapt back, but not before seeing the power of her monstrous feet. The impact alone was sufficient to trigger a strong earthquake and bring down multiple buildings. In response, Hawks swung his long right feather at Mosquito Girl. He continued to swing his feather-like blades at her despite her reaction, which was to bend 90 degrees backwards. Mosquito Girl's response was predictable, even though she clashed her blade hands with him once more. Hawk's feathers rushed directly toward her from behind. Fortunately, Her instincts took over, and she deftly leapt and spun through a number of spaces between them. Once more, though, that was insufficient. Hawks spread his wings and flew directly at her as the feathers returned to him. He then slashed his right wing across her face. Blood spurted out in large quantities, and Mosquito Girl hissed in agony. Hawks then kicked her in the face, sending her flying back in the process. The monster needed to move fast. She tried in vain to stop, but her feet dragged on the ripped street even though she did a backflip. She finally stopped, but not before colliding with a brick wall that had been torn down from its original location. She spread her arms wide and her eyes grew wide. Numerous feathers, both big and small, were flying directly at her. The feathers were knocked away by a sonic attack that followed her powerful, monstrous roar. Hawks anticipated such an event. After taking a chance, he eventually found Mosquito Girl in an opening. Thus, Hawks appeared in front of her, just a few feet away, as she had just defended herself. His wings were mostly gone, but there were 2 long red feathers in each hand. The feather blade on his right was only an inch from her chest. Then it went through her backside and punctured her insides, making her scream in agony. Hawks then targeted her neck with his other feather. He didn't want to kill, but Mosquito Girl was getting harder and harder to handle. It happened at that moment. Mosquito Girl smiled and threw her arms around him. She didn't even react when the feather blade in her chest grew deeper. She appeared to have been oblivious to the pain. She whispered, "Baka," in his ear. She abruptly launched them both into the air and took off from the area. Hawks called forth his feathers to follow her. Despite having greater physical strength than the typical human, he was unable to escape Mosquito Girl's hold. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw the feathers approaching to save its owner. She got an idea from that alone, so she threw the pro hero directly at them. But he was unharmed by the feathers. Rather, they went back to his ass and started to form his wings. Even though the process only took a few seconds, Mosquito Girl had enough time to fly directly at him. Hawk's wings warned him, and he retaliated by blocking a monster kick with his finished right wing. His left wing also blocked Mosquito Girl's attempt to kick him from the other side as she flew around it. Hawks then yelled in frustration and fully spread his wings, releasing a strong wind. "Got ya!" exclaimed Mosquito Girl, or should I say, gut ya. Just inches from his spine, she stabbed him in the back. Hawks let out a cry of agony before she threw them both straight down, Hawks first. He yelled, "Damn it, you haven't won yet." With a playful slash to his right wing, Mosquito Girl said, "Oh, I wouldn't attack if I were you." He gave a yelp. "If you had attacked me right now, what's to say I wouldn't just fly away, and you end up hitting yourself? Now, enjoy the fall. Ha 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 ha." Hawks waited for the impact, his arms folded. Mosquito Girl put pressure on his back and sent him crashing through 5 concrete floors. He screamed more loudly with each impact because it hurt so much, and the monster laughed hysterically. He lay in a crater after the final floor hit with equal force. With a single motion of her arm, Mosquito Girl blew away the dust that had covered the area. He let out a louder cry of agony as she proceeded to step on his injured wing. She then silenced him by stepping on the back of his neck. She pressed his wing once more and said, "Come now, is that all you can do?" She gloated as he gave a bitter yelp. "That's the flaw with you, Hawks. Your quirk is just these stupid bird wings of yours. How else could psychos take you down so easily? Because in the end, a bird without its wings isn't even worth the hunt." Hawks' eyes grew wide with pain and rage. Mosquito Girl was unaware that a stray longwing had suddenly flown into the store and sliced both of her arms. She screamed as blood sprayed everywhere like a fountain. Hawks kicked her in the face and pushed her away with a flap of his free wing. After being ejected from the store, Mosquito Girl found herself back on the streets, her feet dragging on the floor. Hawks came for her again just as she was starting to think. Now, the pro hero was straining himself to the breaking point. He therefore swung his right wing across her abdomen as he flew directly at her. If she hadn't moved back, that alone would have broken her in two, but even that wasn't the only thing. Still, he made a big cut there. After that, Hawks spun around and gave her throat a sharp cut. At this point, Mosquito Girl was choking on her blood. She made an effort to defend herself, but it was insufficient. Hawks simply slashed multiple areas of her body and used his wings to deflect all of her frantic blade swings at him. She was getting covered in her own blood, Mosquito Girl. Finally, he made the decision to break up the fight at that precise moment. He swiftly and severely slashed her body after grabbing 2 large feathers. Mosquito Girl's severed head and ripped limbs were on the ground, forming a pool of blood, by the time he flew by her. The pro hero collapsed to one knee after panting heavily. At least it was over now, even though he had only fought because it was instinctive. Incredible, exclaimed the reporter who was watching the scene. Hawks noticed a helicopter hovering over the scene. Although he had known it existed for some time, he had forgotten about it in that moment of bloodlust. As the renowned Hawks was on one knee with some of the monster's blood on him, millions of people worldwide watched. With a faint laugh, he muttered, "It doesn't matter, though. I hope no one's kid saw that." The newsman turned to the camera beside him and asked, "Did you see that?" "I certainly didn't." Pro hero, Hawks, was so fast that the battle ended in a blink of an eye. "Looks like we can sleep easily knowing one of the Monster Association's strongest has been put down." Hawks inhaled deeply and sighed. He had to get up, but it would not be simple. Even as he forced himself to stand again, every part of his body ached. He was fine except for a sting when he tried to move his right wing. He was aware that he would soon require medical care. His wings began to tingle at that very moment. Not in the danger sense he was accustomed to picking up, but rather something quite alien. His wings only became rigid when he attempted to move them. He groaned as he struggled against it as it then spread throughout his body. What is this sensation? Why do I have this body? Because I made it that way. Hawks turned back to his dead opponent, his eyes widening. To his surprise, though, the pool of blood pulled the abandoned body parts together like a set of ropes. On the resurrected Mosquito Girl, a sly smile appeared. And Hawks shot back, "No, I won't allow it." He struggled with the weight and sped in Mosquito Girl's direction. He swung his feather-like blades at the monster while still holding them in his hands. But even that was insufficient to deter her. Mosquito Girl easily grasped his weapons after growing new arms that resembled human arms. One hand was solely focused on the blade, while the other was on his hand. There were no injuries to either of them. How? Mosquito Girl roared, "Too slow," and gave him a chest kick. Hawks rolled on the ground a few times and spat out some blood. He was able to spin and land on his feet and arms. He gasped and gave Mosquito Girl a stern look, but she just smirked and waved her hand for him to attack. She is deceiving me, that much is obvious. However, how can I respond to this? What caused me to fly more slowly than normal? He halted his thought process and took a sharp breath. He was gradually becoming weaker. Damn it, how is my vision getting blurry? That monster had one final move in her repertoire. Not really though, huh? Hawks was surprised to see her standing right in front of him. She continued to push him on the chest while maintaining her smug expression. Hawks was sent flying back, and he spat out more blood as the air in his lungs was knocked out again. He shouted, "I'm not done yet." Abruptly, he threw most of his wings at Mosquito Girl. While some targeted her front, others targeted her back and sides. They nearly immediately closed the distance between them, but the monster remained unmoved. "Now you're just desperate." What followed caused the millions of viewers to gasp in disbelief. The cameraman, who was also perplexed, marched his expression as the newsman's jaw dropped. The most startling thing was not that Mosquito Girl's right hand was up. Instead, what shocked everyone was that the feathers stopped in midair. She halted my assault. However, how? Hawks pondered, utterly taken aback by the abrupt change. She responded in a way that surprised him even more by saying, "Good question. Let's find out after the bloodbath." She then thrust her arm directly at him. The feathers quickly veered away from Mosquito Girl and headed directly for their master. In order to get them to stop and go back to his ass, Hawk extended his arm and called forth his link. Mosquito Girl yelled, overeyed, and burst out laughing. Baka. He could no longer control his feathers. Hawks was thus exposed to his own peculiarity. Even though none of them struck him in the vital areas, their numbers still caused him excruciating wounds. Hawks cried out in agony as his body was slashed innumerable times. Even the tiny feathers passed through him without hitting the parts that would kill him. Hawks eventually fell to the ground as the carnage came to an end. His own blood was all over every part of his body. Even his face was largely obscured by blood, making it hard to see. Laughing, Mosquito Girl did. "I, honestly, can't believe you lowered your guard yet again. It's quite amusing, but very much expected." Hawks scorned weakly. "Damn, how did I miss it earlier? She's a mosquito, and what mosquitoes can do is spread viruses. That's how she gained the upper hand, and I doomed myself the instant her blood hit me. As she strolled casually in his direction, Mosquito Girl gloated, now you're catching on. I guess you could call it malaria, though I won't say it's limited like the disease. You see, once my blood got into you, I took control of your quirk. Took over my peculiarity, he pondered. Yes, but it's to expect. After all, I am a twin to the pro hero, Eraserhead. She clarified. You see, his quirk allows him to turn off a person's quirk, while mine allows me to take control of one's quirk. Then why? He gasped indignantly. Why didn't you use it in our first fight? Were you mocking me all this time? Mosquito Girl squatted, giggling. She squeezed and cupped his bloody cheeks, making them hurt even more. Mosquito Girl's eyes flashed red, like Shota Izawa's, and she said, well, I never wanted to use it since it reminded me of my older brother. But that was the old me thinking that. Now, I'm just going to do whatever I want. But I'll admit, I deliberately held back from the start of our second fight. Believe me, there was other ways to beat you without this control. Hawks muttered feebly, what? She released his cheeks and said, because I never saw you as an equal. Then she got up and started to leave. Oh, and just while we're at it, I never started a challenge to the pro heroes. That was Psychos's doing, so when you think about it, you were a pawn to her, again. Hawks tightened his jaw. Despite the fever symptoms he was experiencing, he felt a surge of anger. You're not even going to kill me. You'll regret it, I swear. Mosquito Girl halted and twirled back toward him, asking, kill you? I could've, but I won't. Why? Because you're not worth it. You never were. Hawk's pride was more hurt by that than by the pain his body was experiencing. She turned away from him and kept moving on. Now shut up and lie there like the clipped birdie you are. The effects will wear off once I'm gone. Damn you, huh? She glanced back in time to see him approaching him directly. In a split second, his strewn feathers came back and rearranged his wings, and then he shot a single long feather-like blade directly at her. His voice was raspy and angry as he screamed, as a hero, I can't let someone as dangerous as you to get away. He came flying, and Mosquito Girl scowled before jumping over him. Before she severed half of his wings, long blades emerged from her knuckles. Hawks let out a cry of excruciating pain and, but for her, would have fallen to the ground. She caught hold of his ankle and took off. She shocked the world by making sure she and the vanquished Hawks were in full view of the camera. Heroes as well as friends, family, and acquaintances were horrified to see the severely injured Hawks being held aloft by a trophy in one hand. Mosquito Girl asked, Hawks, do you want to know what's sad? You could have escaped this like a worthless trash. But now you're just going to be a scapegoat. Hundreds of thousands of mosquitoes suddenly swarmed the street. Their mother was almost ready to give him to them, so they were patiently waiting. According to Hawks, this isn't over. Even if I fall, someone will eventually take you down. That's what it means to be a hero. Mosquito Girl answered, true. No doubt, you'll be a martyr. A statue will be raised in your honor and countless heroes will pledge to avenge you. But that's the thing, I don't care. Now who's the idiot? She shot back, not me, that's for sure. You see, there's a special thing about my quirk. It isn't the fact that I can control quirks, or the fact that I resemble a mosquito. No, it's the fact that I am constantly evolving. Much like Garo, I grow stronger from each battle. So send every hero, let everyone moan your death. Let me become public enemy no. 1. It won't matter in the end. By the time I'm done, I might become a god-level threat. But of course that's just wishful thinking. Hawks scoffed feebly. She added, giggling, I think this is where our chat ends, Hawks. Farewell. The world let out a collective gasp as she let go. After forming a huge, black dragon head, the mosquitoes opened their mouths. Hawks lost all remaining strength when he was hurled into it. He would now die as a result of pushing himself to the edge and beyond. I let my rage get the better of me and let her play me. I should have known better and not underestimated her. He whispered, I'm sorry, everyone. Some UA students were also observing. One of them was Izuku, whose mouth fell open and his eyes stayed wide. He had always thought that heroes could overcome any obstacles since he was a young child. However, recent events have demonstrated to him that this was not always the case. Even so, the mere sight of monsters like Elder Centipede and Psychos could evoke fear. On the couch, His mother had already passed out from the shock. Meanwhile, Fubuki was covering his clothed chest with her face. Some pupils, such as Fumikage Tokiyami, were unable to do anything but look away from the screen. The scene unfolding in real time disgusted him. He even felt a great deal of emotional burden that the news station would permit this to continue. But to him, it made sense. The fact that nobody could do anything at all terrified everyone too much. Hawks, the fourth-ranked pro hero, was going to die in the most horrifying way imaginable on live television. Then the unexpected occurred. Just in time, a black blur flew and captured the vanquished pro hero. Confusion and curiosity were the primary motivators for each viewer as they gasped. However, UA students, particularly those in Class 1A, were taken aback when the camera focused on the new hero. Denki whispered, "Is that?" According to Shoto Todoroki, our teacher. "Izawa-sensei," exclaimed Izuku. Fubuki turned his head away from him and fixed his gaze on the screen. The black-haired man who just stepped in was unfamiliar to her. However, she was ecstatic when she witnessed him give Hawks to Ms. Joke. Eijiro's older sister, Mizuki, shouted from behind the couch, "Wow, that's your sensei." "Hey, don't yell so close to someone's ear like that," he screamed. She simply shrugged her shoulders and grinned. She goes by the hero name Captain Mizuki as a professional hero. She had red hair like her younger brother, pulled back in a high ponytail with a scrunchie, and a tall, muscular frame. She wore blue shorts with the initials, MZK, on them, a tight blue spandex top with a single stripe on each side, and 3 gold medals around her neck. As she started to climb the couch, she said, "Now this just got interesting. Move over." "Huh, hey, wait, ow." Shota Izawa told Ms. Joke, "Get him out of here. A medical team should be here very soon." "Yes." She glanced past him and gave a subtle nod. The night skies were now covered in mosquitoes, and Mosquito Girl had fallen to the ground. "Are you sure about this? We can fight her together." Shota turned away and said bluntly, "Don't be stupid. She might be stronger than last time, but she's still my sister. As her brother, and a hero, it's my responsibility to take her down. There's no other way but this." Ms. Joke glanced at him, then at the monster. The siblings' eyes were red now, and they were both glaring at one another. After swallowing, she fastened Hawk's arm over her shoulder. Then she started to leave the area. She muttered as she walked away, "You better make it out of this." Shota listened to her but said nothing. He and his sister were the only ones left after she and Hawks left. "I've been waiting for this moment for so long, Oni-chan. Tonight's the night I finally have my revenge for what you did to me years ago," she said in a serious manner. Shota told her, We don't have to do this. Stand down now. Allow yourself to be apprehended. This is your last chance." She snubbed, HMPH. "Like last time, there you go again, being the hero. Tell me, did it feel so good to you when you beat up your defenseless little sister?" Izawa scowled. He seemed perplexed as he blinked twice. I had no other choice. Wait, no. Was that how it went? I'm not sure of how that day went. It's so blurry. Enough of the bullshit, Oni-chan. You can't even take responsibility for that. Not that it matters now. I am no longer that weak little sister. I have grown far stronger, and I will only get stronger after I've destroyed you." Shota said bluntly, "That way of thinking will only lead to your death, you. Other heroes, even stronger and better skilled than Hawks and I will come for you. What would you do about them?" Mosquito Girl ignored him, saying, "Like you care to know. What I'll do has nothing to do with you. For once in my entire life, I actually feel free, no thanks to you. I won't let anyone tell me what I can and cannot do. Not anymore. I am my own person now, dear brother." The newsman received some information from the news station via his Bluetooth while the camera was focused on them. He turned to the camera and nodded. "I have just been informed that the pro hero at present is named Eraserhead, and apparently his sister, the monster Mosquito Girl, is his younger twin sister. Dear viewers, it would seem we're about to watch some serious drama between siblings, and a possible physical confrontation." With a smug huff, Mosquito Girl abruptly shut down her computer. When Shota saw her return to her human form, he let out a little gasp. In addition, she wore white gloves, a black tank top, and blue shorts. As she raised her right arm and gazed at it, she said, "Surprised, aren't you? You see another part of your failure." How long? According to Mosquito Girl, for some time now. I've always felt it deep down. I guess once I accepted my quirk for what it is, it was only natural that I change into either forms. But make no excuse, I'm still as strong as ever. I just want you to look me into these familiar eyes as I end your life. Shota clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Old and happy memories of the two of them flashed through his mind as he gazed at his sister. Back then, he treasured her laugh, her smile, and her unwavering proximity to him. What specifically happened to you, to us? He thought. Was it Dr. Genos or me, psychos? I'm sorry, Master Bang, but those two exploited her and made her into this. He let out a sigh. You're my sister, you. No matter what you are, I will never deny that. But I have a duty as an older brother, and as a hero, to protect the public. So whether it's you or the Monster Association, I'll fight you to the best of my abilities. The Mosquito Girl chuckled. Oh please, you won't make it to the end of the Monster Association's plans. And, Psychos is behind it all. She paused. Mosquito Girl responded. She has been found a lot more than you know. Once the right conditions are met, no one would stand a chance against her. Shota hesitated, reconsidering his course of action. Yu was concealing more than she actually knew. The heroes might have a better chance against Psychos and her Monster Association if he could persuade her to do otherwise, in addition to saving him from having to battle his own sister. Then help us. What? Not just Mosquito Girl was taken aback. Everyone in the audience was taken aback. Although some people saw a clear distinction between Yu and the typical monster, Yu was still viewed as a monster by the general public. Shota clarified, saying, let me rephrase. Help us stop the Monster Association. You've seen what they can do. Innocent lives might get hurt if we don't do something soon. You're not a monster, are you? There must be some good left in you. Master Bang knows. Don't you dare finish that. Yu screamed, giving him a fierce look. You have no right to mention his name. And I don't have any reason to help this world. They turned their back on me, and now you expect me to give them a helping hand. You really have no idea the pain you all caused me. Besides, it's already too late. She exclaimed, her annoyance mounting. The time is coming where you, the heroes, and all of mankind, will fall. You fools just haven't seen it yet. There'll be no law, no justice, no order, except for the one that will replace it. Shota swallowed some saliva. Despite his best efforts to conceal it, his sister's words had made him shiver. She clearly had more information than she was ready to share. After a few seconds of panting, she pulled herself together. Society as we know it shall come to an end. You heroes cannot defeat Psychos, or it. Yu's face briefly flashed with fear, but she quickly shook it off. Before her mosquito-like wings and a long, sharp blade emerged from both knuckles, a serious expression took over. She said, that's enough talking, brother. It's about time I deliver your head to the front gate of UA. Shota said, I see, with a disappointed tone. He put on a determined face and assumed a fighting stance for the water rock smashing fist. Then I will do what I must. She grinned and giggled, saying, you will try. But it won't be good enough. You then jumped directly at him, initiating the sibling fight.
So this was it for this series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.